ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंचाकल्पतरुभ्यस्य कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। सर्वशास्त्रादि पीयूष सर्ववैदिक सत्फल सर्व सिद्धांत रत्नाद्य सर्वलौकिक दृक्प्रद सर्वभागवत प्राण श्रीमद्भागवतो प्रभु कलिद्वंतो श्रीदादित्य श्रीकृष्ण परिवर्तिता परमानंद पाठाय प्रेम वर्ष अक्षराय ते सर्वद सर्वसेवाय श्रीकृष्णाय नमोस्तुते। मद एक बंधु मद संगीन मद गुरु मद महादन मन निष्ठारक मन भाग्य मद आनंद नमोस्तुते। असाधु साधु तादाइन अति नीच ताकर हाना मुंचा कदाचिन मां प्रेम न हृत कंथयो स्पुरः। So last class we discussed this verse sarvada sarva. Here it actually says sarvada sarva sevaya. Right, in all situations, under all circumstances, one should actually, and in that verse, it was actually talking about the last of the Chatushloki, that one should actually search out for the absolute truth. And we see the same words here, sarvada sarva, and it actually says one should actually. So the translation goes, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you, Srimad Bhagavatam. By your recitation, one attains transcendental bliss because your syllables shower down pure love of God. You are to be served by everyone always, right? By everyone always. And that's also the theme of the last of the Chatushloki. So mention that and let's continue. नारायण नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। श्रीमतां स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्य श्रवण कीर्तनं हृदयन्तस्त्वभद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सितां। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining. Nice to see all of you. If you can turn on the cameras, please do so. Okay, so let's continue. So last class, our entire class was on discussion of the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, and there were some nice, interesting questions on the group. So we'll discuss those answers also. But would anyone like to share any realization here before we start?
Yes, Pooja, I think one of the things I was thinking is these verses are a proof that Krishna is a person, because he's coming and shaking hands and he's speaking to Brahmaji, and that's how. And the second thing was this knowledge is coming in the parampara right from the Lord, because it's coming from Krishna to Brahma to Narada and Vyasdev and so on. So, yeah.
Perfect, bro. Very nice. Actually, to prove the point of personalism, the certain sections from the Bhagavatam which are actually repeatedly quoted. One is certainly this section of the Chatushloki, because this is giving the nutshell of the entire Bhagavatam. And in this, the first verse of the Chatushloki, 3 times Krishna uses the word aham. And our Acharya actually in Prabhupada in the starting of the purport mentions the point that Lord Sri Krishna is taking his forefinger and pointing to himself and saying aham, aham, so 3 times he actually says, and what could be more greater of a proof when the Lord himself is coming to Brahma and saying, I, right here, this person, I actually existed before this creation, and there within this creation, and after the creation, it is I only who exists, right? So what more of the proof? The other section from the Bhagavatam that is actually, given as a proof for is actually said, given as a proof for the personalism is a meditation of Vyasadeva from the first canto, where he personally saw the Lord with the energy. So that's another one of the sections that's quoted. Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice. Anyone else?
One of the things that really stood out to me in looking through my notes was, what is the goal? And the goal is love of Godhead. Even up to the point of prema bhakti, seeing Krishna both within and without. And that all of the revealed scriptures come to the same conclusion that there is a higher power. And what you just brought up in the you said while we were going through the little thing we say before the class, the Shravatra in all space and time, and Shravada in all circumstances. And that just really touched me.
Thank you for the wonderful points. Yeah. And then we discussed this in relation to your first point you said about Prema Bhakti. And we say that how Bhagavatam is actually these 4 verses gives the Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. And we see even in the Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita, it talks of Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana, but it gives a Sambandha, then it gives a Prayojana, and then it gives the Abhideya. Even Bhagavad Gita follows the same order. Sambandha, right? So who are we? What's our relationship with God? But then it talks about what is our ultimate purpose. So when we actually know that the ultimate goal is to actually have Prema Bhakti, then we say, okay, how do I reach that goal? So when we are doing Abhideya, we should always be conscious of what is our ultimate goal. And that's why these Chatushloki give the order of Sambandha, Prayojana, and then Abhideya. Okay. Anyone else before we get started?
I really liked how Prabhupada emphasized the universality of Bhakti Yoga, how it's good for all people, all species, all stages of life, all yugas, all the different, even if you're a very sinful person, like you can take up Bhakti.
Yeah. Like, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Jiva Goswami, they really this verse, the last of Chatushloki, they quote like so many verses from different Puranas, Upanishads, just to prove the point that in all circumstances, for all people, the recommended process is actually Bhakti Yoga. Whatever is the situation, Bhakti Yoga is for everyone, under all circumstances, under all times. Okay. Now, anyone else? Or we should.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, as I posted in the group, I really was meditating on this point that it's written in the 36th verse of the Chatushloki, that if we are not remembering Vasudeva, even for a moment, that is the greatest loss of our time.
So powerful, so powerful. I mean, like statements like this, always like keeps us on our toes. That how we have to be conscious of Krishna at every moment. So there were some questions on the group. So one question which actually I missed explaining, and it's good that question came up. In that last of the Chatushlokis, text number 36, it actually says Etavad Eva Jigyasam, and it says Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam, right? Directly and indirectly. So what does that directly and indirectly? So what is the point of this verse? The point of this verse is one should search after the absolute truth, and that will basically perform this bhakti yoga, and one should do it both directly and indirectly. Right? So when we actually see in this word directly and indirectly in relationship to the previous verses of the Chatushloki, we see how in the third verse, right, where Krishna has actually said that one should see himself both within and without. So in relationship to that, we can actually say in the fourth verse of Chatushlaki, when it says indirectly and directly. So there are two aspects of the absolute truth. One is the aspect of transcendence, and one is the aspect of eminence, right? So what are these two aspects? Transcendence is the Lord in the spiritual world, showing his different pastimes, his leelas, his manifestation in the spiritual world. Eminence, right? Eminence is the manifestation of the Lord in the material world. Right? So when you say directly and indirectly, directly means directly knowing the pastimes of the Lord, his name, his qualities, his activities, and so on. Indirectly is to see the presence of the Lord in this material world, right? And even if you consider Bhagavad Gita, so many verses we actually see when the Lord says, Krishna is saying, I am the taste of water, right? We see in the 7th chapter, in the 9th chapter, Krishna is actually making the point that how he is manifesting in this material world. So indirectly refers to that aspect of eminence, that where even in this material world, though that is not the direct manifestation of the Lord, is the impersonal aspect of the Lord, or the energy of the Lord that's manifested. Even through this energy, we should actually connect to the Supreme. We should search out the Supreme Personality of God. Right? So if you take this point further also, like in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we read about, in the 3rd canto, we'll discuss about Sankhya Yoga, right? So if you see in Sankhya Yoga, when Kapila Muni is actually explaining to his mother Devahuti, like he is actually talking of analysis of all these material elements and finally bringing that to the conclusion of Krishna, right? So if you consider indirectly, one approach would be like how in Sankhya Yoga, one will see all the elements and say, oh yeah, all earth, water, fire, air, ether, all these things are there, but where is life? And then come to the conclusion of spirit soul, and then beyond that, the source of spirit soul, which is actually coming to Paramatma and then Krishna. So that would refer to actually the indirect process. And even if you consider in the 5th canto, the aspect of cosmology, like one may say Bhagavatam is like, why is it describing cosmology in so much detail, right? About the position of the earth, the Mount Meru, and the sun, and all these planetary systems. Why is it describing? The theme is not so much about, yes, understanding. Yes, that is there, that is giving the understanding of the entire universe. But beyond that, it is actually making the point that how dharma is actually practiced in all these different sections of the universe, or bhakti is performed in all these different sections. So that's why we have, in the 5th canto, I think it's chapter number 18, 17 and 18, you have prayers from people of different parts of the universe. Kim Purusha, Loka, and all these, how they are actually offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of God. So even that section of cosmology, when you're actually studying the universe, that one may say, the universe is temporary. Why are we studying? But through that study, we are actually finding that, oh, everyone in all these places are actually offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of God, like Krishna. So that also can be considered indirect, right? And then we see even in Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, Krishna actually says that I'm going to give you knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. Knowing this, nothing further shall remain for you to know, right? And in that section, what does he start off by explaining? What's that verse? earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. All these 8 are my separated energies. And then beyond that, aparayam itastanyam prakriti vidhimeparam jiva bhuta mahabhav yedam dharite jat. Beyond that is the Atma. And then, but I am the source of both the material and the spiritual. And then further, he actually says, oh, you can see me as a taste of water, and then the light in the sun, and so on. Right? So seeing the Lord through this material manifestation in indirect. Another, that is the explanation here. But also, this word of indirect has been used sometimes to explain in terms of yama and niyama. That means the positive activities of bhakti and also the things that we should not do. Even Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Devotion, when you see the 64 items of devotional service, out of that, many of them are actually what one should not do, and then what one should do. So how we have yam and niyam in Astanga Yoga, positive and negative. Similarly, in bhakti also, we have things that we should do and things we should not do in terms of offenses or in terms of breaking or detaching from this material world. So it is knowledge and also it is the aspect of detachment. So positive and also detachment from this material. So that's under explanation of indirect. Okay. So that was one question. And okay, so Aruna, this question will actually come in the next verse, 37. We'll talk about that.
Prabhuji, I have a quick question about the translation itself of verses 35 and 36. In 36, when it is written up to this, does it mean up to Bhakti Yoga?
Up to Prema Bhakti.
Up to Prema.
Not only Bhakti Yoga, because the previous verse, what is the Prayojana there? Seeing Krishna both within and without. And what is Prabhupada stressing in that, based on the Acharyas, is that the main point there is love of God, Prema Bhakti. So it is not, you have to search, you have to keep on practicing until one actually comes to a stage where he can see Krishna both within and without. And what does Prabhupada actually say in the purport? As we have to search until the point when there is a television in the heart and you can actually see Lord Krishna's pastimes happening. Up to that point, we have to continue on our path of bhakti. Okay. And you had one more, Mathaji?
Prabhuji, so I think it's clear now. So that's why the verse 35, you said it's a Prayojana, Prema Bhakti, and 36 is Sadhana Bhakti?
Yes. Yes. So 36 is the Abhidaya, the process. So Sadhana Bhakti leading all the way to Prema. So it will actually include the aspect of Raganuga Bhakti and leading on to Prema.
So Prabhuji, if we read just the translation of 35, so how can we explain that this verse is of the Chatushloki is Prayojana, Prema Bhakti?
See, that's the whole point of the Chatushloki, is they are in nutshell or a seed from. So unless we have the commentaries of Srila Prabhupada, Vishnacharya, we won't be able to really understand what is the real essence of this. And the entire Srimad Bhagavatam is expanding from this point, right? And we'll see entire Srimad Bhagavatam is establishing love of Godhead as the ultimate goal.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Okay, so Aruna Mata's question will be text 37. And Vijay Mata, your one question about all those nominative, causative, I'll answer on the group because each one I'll do that. And the other question, I wasn't very clear, but if I actually have understood your question right, is basically in that section of when Prabhupada is actually explaining that. Let me find that. It's in...
This is also the referring to 931 Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, exactly.
But in 931 Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada is clearly writing in the purport that it is an accidental fall down. But here, that statement is very powerful, actually. It doesn't seem that it is referring to accidental fall down.
Well, Prabhupada's point here is, let's see, it is just, even if a person is fully addicted to all sorts of simple acts, if he happens to be engaged in loving transcendent service to the Lord under proper guidance, he is to be considered the most perfect holy man without a doubt. So this is, and why Prabhupada is explaining that in terms of 931 Bhagavad Gita, to make the point that even if a person is sinful, Like we consider the example of Midrari Dahanta, engage in all sorts of simple activities. If he gets the mercy of Narad Muni and under the direction of Narad Muni, if he takes up devotional service, as soon as he's taken on the process, he is properly situated. Though in his heart, some remnants or residual of those desire for sinful activity is still there, but as long as he's engaged in the process, he should be considered saintly. And the other point you made in the question is also, as we take up devotional service, certainly all those sinful activities will go away. It is a process of clearing. Right? But why is Prabhupada actually quoting this in this section? To make the point that even the most sinful of all sinful people can take up devotional service as long as they come in contact with the devotee and get mercy from him. Okay, ready? Okay, so let's go 37. And then, anyway, I'll just mention, so Divyanitya Limat also posted a section from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is after the deliverance of Prakashana Saraswati, which is mentioned in the Adi Lila, right? In the Madhya Lila. This is after Prakashana Saraswati is actually delivered. Then, once there is this meeting where there's Kirtan, and then after Prakashana Saraswati comes to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he asks him that please explain the Brahma Sutras, right? So what are the Brahma Sutra? Brahma Sutra is another word for Vedanta Sutra, right? And Vedanta Sutra are, so the entire Vedas are given by Vyasadeva in terms of codes or equations, or, just like a sutra. Sutra means in a condensed form, like Janmadhya Asyaha, Janmadhyasya Yataha. That is one Vedanta Sutra, right? Athato Brahma Jigyasa. So it's just like in condensed code forms. That's it. That is a Vedanta Sutra. So Prakashana Saraswati asked Lord Chaitanya, please explain these Vedanta Sutras to me. And the Vedanta Sutras, because they are in code, just in condensed form, it is, people can give different explanations to that. But as we, Vaishnavas, we explain Srimad Bhagavatam as the national commentary of the Vedanta Sutra. Right? So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he establishes that, okay, you want to know Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra? The national commentary of that Vedanta Sutra is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he says, well, if you want to understand the Srimad Bhagavatam, then let's refer to the Chatushloki. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes and he quotes all these verses, starting from text 31, all the way to 36. So all those verses, 7 verses, are actually there in that section of Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is taking these the 7 verses actually totally, and explaining the Vedanta Sutra and saying that these 7 verses give you full knowledge of Vedanta Sutra. So, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself, is establishing the importance of these verses and saying that you understand this, you understand the entire Vedanta Sutra. Okay. Right. So let's go on. Text number 37.
Text 37. Etan matam samatishta paramena samadhina bhavan kalpa vikalpeshu na vinuyati karhichit.
Hare Krishna. Oh Brahma, just follow this conclusion by fixed concentration of mind, and no pride will disturb you, neither in the partial nor in the final devastation. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So what was Brahma's request before? He said, please tell me how I will not be bewildered. How, while I'm doing this task of creation, I should not think that I am the main creator. I should not act out of false pride. Please tell me how I can get the instruction to act as an instrument. So the answer to that is actually the text 4, and one should actually, Chatushloki 4, and one should actually, you do the creation, but do it in bhakti, in sadhana bhakti, or in the process of bhakti. And then 37, he's saying, if you actually meditate, follow these 4 instructions, in these 4 verses, right? This matam, conclusion, these 4 verses, samathishta, if you actually remain fixed, or remain fixed in concentration of mind on these 4 Chatushloki, and the other word he actually uses is samadhina. So samathishta and samadhina, right? So remaining fixed, and samadhina is concentration of the mind. So if you're fixing your concentration of the mind on these verses and contemplating it with concentration, then what does he say? Na muyati karichit, then you will not be bewildered. When Bhavan Kalpa Vikalpeshu. Either during the time of Prabhupada explains immediate devastation or in the final devastation, you will not be bewildered if you keep these 4 instructions fixed in the concentration of mind and contemplate this with concentration. So these 2 words, samadhina and samathishta, beautiful word. Even practically for us in our devotional service, these 2 words, and this goes to the point that Karuna Mataji was also mentioning in the starting, that how it is that sarvatra sarvada, in all circumstances, one has to be engaged in bhakti. So Krishna is telling Brahma, in all circumstances, be fixed on this conclusion. Keep contemplating on these 4 verses. By that, you will not be bewildered by Maya. And we have mentioned this point in our previous classes that, I was thinking of this example that Maya is just like a thief who is actually waiting outside our house for us to just leave the house. She's just waiting outside. As soon as the person leaves, oh yeah, enter. Right? So similarly, as soon as we leave our consciousness of Krishna, Maya is just waiting to grab us. And hence the importance of being, like we mentioned this earlier, cautious and conscious in Krishna consciousness. Cautious, that is referring to the point about having that healthy fear of Maya. And Prabhupada, how Prabhupada said, the problem with my disciples, we don't take Maya seriously. We are not we are not scared of Maya. Right? In the 10th canto, 2nd chapter, text number 8 in the purport, with that entire episode of Devaki and Vasudeva and giving birth to Krishna, there our acharyas mentioned this extremely wonderful point, that it was because Devaki was fearful of Kamsa. Out of that fear, that later on Krishna was actually appeared in the womb. So similarly, when we actually have that fear of Maya, the healthy fear of Maya, then that fear will actually protect us from falling into Maya. Like we give this example, if there's a warning that, oh, it's going to be, there's fire here or something. If you're always cautious, oh, it says that there's going to be fire in this pathway. If you're always cautious, then you will not be burned by fire. But the moment you slack, immediately you could get burnt. So similarly, Maya is like that, right? So that's why this point that you should always like have this, these 2 words, samathishta and samadhina. Always keep contemplating these 4 instructions, and hence you will not fall into Maya. Yeah? So Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam Chatushloki. And he says that, Krishna has summarized the whole Bhagavad Gita in 4 shlokas, and here similarly here we have the 4 Bhagavatam shlokas, which are the summary of the entire Bhagavatam. And thus the secret purpose of the most important Bhagavatite conclusion has been explained by the original speaker of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Lord Shri Krishna himself has come to Brahma, and in 4 verses he has given this entire conclusion. And then Prabhupada is actually making this point that when Krishna is actually telling Brahma that do not be bewildered, Prabhupada is elaborating on that. That means that you accept the instruction as I have given to you. Maybe later on, some sages who may come and they may explain this same knowledge in a different way, but you don't be bewildered by that. Accept it as it is. Accept Bhagavad Gita as it is, not as it is not. So explain it as it is, right? So similarly, Prabhupada is making the point. We have to explain. So Krishna is telling Brahma, take this Bhagavatam knowledge as it is. Don't be bewildered by other false commentaries. And Prabhupada says that, people who may be grammarians or non-devotee material wranglers may try to give false interpretation even to this Chatushloki, where they actually use the word aham and say aham is not Krishna. Aham refers to everyone, including Brahma and everyone, so all those influences. So impersonalist interpretation, one should actually be careful not to be misled by that. So Krishna's warning to Brahma is actually applicable to each one of us. Now the second theme of the entire purport is the point where Prabhupada is actually saying that how is one qualified to receive this knowledge of the Chatushloki? How is one qualified to receive this knowledge? Right? So Prabhupada actually makes a point that let's see. So yeah, so he starts off and he says, the bona fide spiritual master by his personal activities teaches the disciple the principles of devotional service. So first of all, he's making the point that this knowledge has to be received by a bona fide spiritual master who himself is actually engaging, who himself is always contemplating these 4 verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, who is engaged in the sadhana bhakti, who is engaged in the process of love of Godhead. So one who is actually personally engaged in these activities, that bona fide spiritual master, from that person one should actually learn the principles of devotional service. And then he actually goes further and says the importance of So he says, by following the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master, in conjunction with the principles of the Shastra, the student will rise to the plane of complete knowledge, which is exhibited by development of detachment from the world of sense gratification. So Prabhupada is actually making this point, and he's actually saying that unless we take up this process of devotional service under a guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, and we have to come to the stage of complete knowledge and detachment from sense gratification. We have to come to a state of complete knowledge, and Prabhupada refers to a stage as either the Brahma Bhuta stage or the Atma Ram stage. Unless one is fully self-satisfied and is not hankering for material sense gratification, he cannot really be a true recipient of the knowledge, or he cannot completely understand the essence of the Chatushlok. Right? So that's the theme, and Prabhupada also quotes this verse from 1 to 20. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogata bhagavad tattva vijnana mukta sangha se jaya. Evam prasanna manaso. Unless we are at the stage of Brahma Muta Prasannatma, na sochati na kankshati. As long as we are in the stage of hankering and lamentation, we are not true recipients of this knowledge. We have to elevate our consciousness, following the instructions of Guru, to the stage where we have a detachment from this sense gratification. So only in this stage we can actually really know the mystery of the sense of God. And then in the stage of Prabhupada says, full satisfaction and detachment. Right? Then the Lord himself will actually give us the direct instruction. How Krishna gave direct instruction to Brahma, similarly the Lord will give that instruction to us. And Prabhupada goes, Tesham Sadha Yuktana Bhajatam Priti Purvakam Dadami Buddhiyam. Krishna himself will give us knowledge. How he gave knowledge to Brahma, and what did he say at the starting of Chatushloki? I will give you knowledge, and also I will give you realization of this knowledge. So similarly, when we actually, through our sadhana bhakti, come to the stage of the full satisfaction and detachment, then Krishna himself will give us realization of this knowledge. And that is the way we can actually really understand the Chatushloki. Okay. So, yeah. And then Prabhupada says we can understand the 4 verses by direct perception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So how this entire chapter, what have we have been discussing, that Brahma is the journey that Brahma is going through, starting from his ignorance, is performing austerity, the Lord actually revealing, pleased with him, then the Lord actually revealing the knowledge, then Brahma acting as an instrument, right? And then Brahma praying that I never be influenced by false pride, right? And then, so this entire process is actually our own journey. It is our own journey. So we are to follow this example of Brahmaji, and further in the verses will actually make the same point. So how Brahma, he had direct perception of the Lord. But why did he have direct perception? Because he was performing the austerity in bhakti, and by that he actually pleased the Lord. So similarly, on our path of devotion, we have to just have that process the patience, while we are engaging bhakti, whether day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, just keep going on with these activities of the bhakti. And then when the Lord is pleased with us, then he will give us the direct perception of himself. So we just have to be patient and keep begging him, oh Krishna, when will you reveal yourself to me? Right? And in that mood, we continue our path of bhakti for days, months, years, decades, lifetimes sometimes, and so on. Yeah. So that's the mood. That's the mood. So Prabhupada says that's how we qualify ourselves to receive this knowledge of the Chatushloki. So it is not only the theoretical knowledge, but it is the realization. And that will come when we reach the stage of Atmaram or Brahmabhuta or Evam Prasanna Manaso, and so on. Full satisfaction and detachment. Okay, so that's the second theme in the purport. The third point that Prabhupada does mention is, so Prabhupada says, and this is very specific to this day of Brahma, that when, so Krishna gave Brahma the vision of the Vaikuntha planets, right? And then after that, he came to Brahma, he shook Brahma's hand, right? And then he gave the Chatushloki. Now, Prabhupada is quoting Gopala Tapani Upanishad and making the point that the form of Krishna that appeared in front of Brahma is the cowherd boy of Vrindavan. The cowherd boy of Vrindavan. That particular form of Krishna appeared in front of Brahmaji. Right? The Nanda Krishna, the highest, the supreme personality of Krishna, the Krishna of Vrindavan, that's the form that actually came. And Prabhupada is actually elaborating and says that is the reason Brahma actually compiled the Brahma Samhita, which is giving a description of what? Goloka Vrindavan. So if the realization was just up to the level of Vaikuntha, how did Brahma actually compile the Brahma Samhita? So hence that form that actually appeared in this day of Brahma, when the Chatushloki was spoken, is the cowherd boy, Nandana Krishna. So that should answer Arundhati Mataji's question. And hence Prabhupada is actually making the point that we are receiving this knowledge from Brahma to Narada to Vyasadeva, and coming in the line to Srila Prabhupada and this Bhagavatam. This Bhagavatam, starting from this Chatushloki, is giving us knowledge and realization of which form of Krishna? That same cowherd boy of Vrindavan. So this Bhagavatam is not just up to the Vaikuntha planets, it is giving us knowledge about Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. So hence Prabhupada actually makes that point. And he concludes and says, Krishna Su Bhagavan Swayam, this is clear. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam means consciousness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. And Srimad Bhagavatam is a sound representation of the Lord as much as Bhagavad Gita is. Right? Okay, so that is, so through Srimad Bhagavatam, we are getting a revelation of Brajeshwara Tanaya or Nanda Krishna, cowherd boy of Vrindavan. Okay, so text 38. Is this okay, Arundhati Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you so much.
38.
Prabhuji?
Shrishika.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Venkat.
Sorry. Prabhuji, like Brahma already saw the form of Krishna as a coward boy, but in Brahma Mohan Leela, yeah, how can we correlate that, Prabhuji?
Yeah. So actually, if you see, like we are in the Madhvacharya line, right? Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya. So actually the followers of Madhvacharya, such in Udupi and that place, they do not even accept this Brahma Vimohan Leela. Because they say Brahma is our head. How can Brahma be bewildered? He received the knowledge of Chatushloki. So they don't even discuss this 13th chapter of the Bhagavatam, the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, because they're saying that Brahma cannot be bewildered. But we are in the same. Brahma is the head of a sampradaya, but we accept the Brahma Vimohan Leela as a pastime. And that Brahma was involved in the pastime is actually a glorification of Brahmaji and not point that Brahma got bewildered even after receiving Chatushloki. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur actually, let me see, to this verse or to the next verse actually, he explains the point that, let me see, where is it? Yeah. So he actually makes the point that Brahma's bewilderment in seeing the daughter, later on we'll see that Vak episode, where he saw his own daughter and he got bewildered. That did not happen in this day of Brahma, because he just received a Chatushloki. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is making the point that Brahma Vimohan Leela, that is a pastime produced by mercy, to reveal Brahma something more deeper. It is not the bewilderment of Maya, bewilderment of Brahma due to Maya, because he's already made the point in 37. What did he say? Na vimoyati karich. You will not be bewildered if you do this. Right? So it is not the bewilderment, it's fasting. Okay. Okay, go ahead. 38.
Shishuka uvacha sampradishyaivam ajano jananam parameshtinam pashyatastasya tadrupam atmanon yarunadharihi.
Jiva Goswami said to Maharaj Parikshit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, after being seen in his transcendental form, instructing Brahmaji, the leader of the living entities, disappeared.
Yeah. So basically here the story is continuing. So this up to text 37, the previous verse is what Krishna actually spoke to Brahma. Okay? Now 38, Sukadeva Goswami is continuing the story and he's saying, Sri Shukavacha, Sampradisha, after fully instructing Brahmaji, right? And the word for Krishna is used as Ajanaha. Ajanaha means, okay, so Prabhupada explains this point, Ajana, in the purport, and he says he's Ajana, or the supreme amongst all Janana. Right? So Janaha means people in general. Ajanaha means one unique among all the living entities. Right? That is similar to the verse Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. Among all the eternals, there is one supreme eternal. Among all the conscious beings, one supreme. So similarly, Ajanaha. Among all the Janaha people, there's one supreme, and that is Ajana. So that unique, that supreme personality, after he actually gave the knowledge to whom? Parameshtinam. Parameshtinam means to the supreme leader of all living entities. So Ajanaha, that supreme person of all the living beings, has given knowledge to the leader of all living beings, that's Brahma. So imagine the knowledge that is given should be the highest, because it is given from the highest, the topmost living being, to the Brahmaji, who is the leader of all living beings, Parameshtina. So hence these two words are actually very important. Ajana, Janana, referring to the Supreme Lord himself, and Parameshtina, referring to Brahma. So after Brahma was actually completely instructed by Ajanaha, the Supreme Lord, and then it also says Pashyataha, Tasya Tadrupam. So after seeing the form of the Lord, right? Pashyataha means to see. He saw Tadrupam. That means he had darshan of Vaikuntha, he had darshan of Lord Shri Krishna himself. After that, Nirunad means he disappeared. That entire vision, the form of Krishna, disappeared in front of Brahmaji. Now, Prabhupada also makes another wonderful point here. He actually says, whenever we talk of knowledge, like if you take the verse Nityo Nityanam, Chetanas Chetana. What does Chetana mean? Chetana means like consciousness or awareness or knowledge, right? And as soon as we use the word Chetana, knowledge, that means that is the personal aspect of the Lord. Because knowledge means something that is received from another person, right? As soon as we say knowledge, right? So that means there is some level of consciousness there. Right? You wouldn't give knowledge to a dead stone, right? Because there's no consciousness. So as soon as you say Chetana, that means there is knowledge that is conscious. And then using that word, Prabhupada actually makes a point, and he says everything in the spiritual world is full of knowledge, because there is no question of ignorance, right? There is no question of tamaha, darkness. Everything there is full of knowledge. If everything there is full of Chetana, that means that everything there, which is full of knowledge, is actually an individual and a person. And hence Prabhupada says, everything in the spiritual world is individual and personal. So even the flowers in the spiritual world, even like the stones in the spiritual world, everything, actually there is no thing in the spiritual world. Whatever is there in spiritual world is an individual and a person. Right? So that's the point Prabhupada is using the word Chetana. He's actually elaborating and saying that everything is actually in the spirit. The land, the water, the tree, the mountain, the river, the man, the animal, the bird, everything is actually of the same quality, Chetana. That means everything is individual and personal. So there is no question of impersonalism in the spiritual world. Right? So Prabhupada explains very nicely. Okay. Right, so there's no space for impersonalism. That's the main theme of the purport, right? Right, and then Prabhupada concludes and says, like how Brahma, Krishna has personally, the Ajanaha has explained to the leader of all living entities, Parameshtinam, and Parameshtinam is actually explaining to Narada, and Narada is giving to Vyas, Vyas to Sukadev, and similarly it is coming down, we are receiving that same knowledge, which is actually right? So the last sentence Prabhupada says, through Sukadev Goswami, grace and by the mercy of Maharaj Parikshit, we are all given Srimad Bhagavatam perpetually to learn the science of the absolute personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. Okay. Is the point of Chaitanya, does it make sense? Yeah, okay. Okay, let's go to text number 39.
Antarhitendriyartaya haraye vihitanjalihi sarvabhutamayo vishvam sasarjedam sapurvavat.
Who's next?
On the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who is the object of transcendental enjoyment for the senses of devotees, Brahma, with folded hands, began to recreate the universe, full with living entities, as it was previously.
Right. So it says Antarhita means disappeared. So the form of the Lord disappeared from Brahmaji's vision. But the beautiful point here is Indriya Arthaya. So they are not saying, so previously how they described the Lord? Ajanaha Janana, the one among all the Jana. Now they are saying that Lord disappeared, and who is what? Indriya Arthaya. So we in Chatushloki we read the word, the second one it says Artha. Artha means meaning, right? So similarly we see that Arthaya means one who is the object of transcendental enjoyment for the senses of the devotees, or unto him whose qualities such as beauty are the objects of the senses. So basically the point is made, yes, he disappeared, but it is to whom all our senses can actually really get happiness in. If those senses are actually used to see, to meditate on the form of the Lord, to hear the message of the Lord, then those senses are really of Artha. Otherwise, the senses are actually not of Artha. So this actually refers to the second of Chatushloki, that anything that is without, that appears to be of any value, if it is not in relation to Krishna, that is simply Maya, right? That is Maya. So similarly here, Indriya Arthaya. So anything the senses are engaged in, and if that is, let me restate it. Indriya Arthaya, anything that the senses can actually get happiness only when they are actually engaged in service of the Lord, or the purpose of the senses is finally to see the Lord, to serve the Lord. So Indriya Arthaya, and then Haraya referring to Lord Hari himself. So this is the first part of the verse, and second part it says Vihitanjalihi. Anjali means folded hands, right? Anjali, with folded hands, Brahma actually, so we see that mood, that Brahma has received the knowledge, he considers himself fortunate to actually have the direct darshan. So Vihita Anjali, in folded hands, then with that mood of submission, with that mood of surrender, with that mood of devotion, now what is he doing? Now he is actually doing Vishwam Sasar Jedam. He is actually creating this Vishwa, right? And another important word is Purvavat, as it was exactly created before. So this is not the knowledge of Brahma that when he was born. This is one of the days of Brahma, and the previous day there was already creation, And then after that, when Brahma sleeps as annihilation, again Purvavat is creating as created before. Right. So, right. So in this section, actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is actually making the point that Purvavat indicating that it is the bewilderment of Brahma with his daughter that happened in the previous day, not in this day when the Chatushloki was spoken. Okay. And Prabhupada explains that the Indriya Artha, that's like the theme of the purport, he says, Hari is the object for fulfilling the senses of all living entities. And he quotes a beautiful verse from Hari Bhakti Subodhaya. He says, Akrishno phalam tvadarsha darshanam hi. That basically means the purpose of our visual sense, the purpose of our eyes are fulfilled when we actually see the form of Krishna. Right? And the second it says, Tano phalam tvadarsha gatra sangaha. Right? The purpose of our body is actually fulfilled by touching the form of the Lord. Right? And we can also say touching the devotees of the Lord, like embracing the devotees of the Lord and so on. And then third one, it says Jiva Phalam Tvadarsha Kirtanam Hi. What is the real purpose of a tongue? To do kirtan. So the purpose of the tongue is actually fulfilled when it's actually used in glorifying the qualities of the Lord. Hence the word Indriya Artha. Okay. And then the last verse says Sudurlabha Bhagavata Hi Loke. And such a person who is actually using all his senses only for the satisfaction of the Lord, that person is very, very rare to find. And that's basically a pure devotee of the Lord. Right? So Prabhupada says that actually, why are these senses given to us? Finally, the senses are given to us so that we can actually use these senses to reform our rebellious attitude. We talk of that RRA question, RRA, right? What is RRA? Reform our rebellious attitude. Now we have discussed up to this point RRA, RRA term. Now Prabhupada is taking it to the next level and saying RRA followed by RED. And I love acronyms, that's how I remember things. So RRA followed by RED. What is RED? You have to re-engage in direct service of the Lord. Right? So you can say RRDS, re-engage in direct service of the Lord. So we reform our rebellious attitude by re-engaging in direct service to the Lord. Right? So we have to engage our senses in the service of the Lord. And that's the definition of bhakti, right? What is Sarvopadi Vinyan Muktam Tat Paratena Nirmalam Rishikena Sevanam Bhakti. That we have to engage our senses in the service of the master of the senses, and that is the definition of bhakti. Okay, so that's the point. So the senses are actually given to us so that we can actually reform our rebellious attitude, and in that way, again, go back to Krishna, connect to Krishna. Then the next theme of the purport Prabhupada is saying, and actually the entire creation is actually done to give a chance for conditioned souls to actually return back home, back to Godhead. And he basically makes the point that Brahmaji, Narada, Vyasa, and everyone coming in that line, they know the purpose of the creation, and hence they actually become busy. They become busy with the same purpose of the Lord. They are always busy. Why? With the same purpose. They know the purpose of creation is to reclaim condition, and hence they travel all around and give Krishna to everyone. And like you see the life of Prabhupada, you see the schedule of Prabhupada's life, right? His one-day schedule. He slept like 2 hours, right? But throughout the day, traveling around the world, meeting people, translating Bhagavatam from 12 to 4 at night, every moment he's actually just so busy because he knows the real purpose of the Lord is just to reclaim the conditioned souls, and hence he's like totally engaged in that particular seva. Okay. And then the last point in Purport Prabhupada says that, so we have senses, right? And someone may say the senses are the cause why we are here in this material world, because senses want to enjoy. The lust is actually in the senses. The eyes want to see a beautiful object. The tongue wants to taste something. That's the reason we are. So someone may say, okay, the way to get out is you stop using the senses. Stop using the senses. And Prabhupada says that is actually the impersonalist philosophy. They say the senses are a problem, so you stop using the senses, right? And actually said all the senses are illusion. Actually, even the senses of the Lord is actually illusion. That is basically Mayavadi. But Prabhupada says this is the improper treatment of the conditioned souls. Like he gives the example that if you have a problem in the eyes, you don't go and pluck out your eyes. You get the eyes treated so that you can see clearly. Similarly, right now, our senses are conditioned. So you take the right treatment. And what's the right treatment? REDS. You have to re-engage them in the direct service of the Lord. And then when we re-engage them, then we get pure. We get cured by that process. And then that is the right process, not the process of denying the use of the senses, which the impersonalists do. Next verse, text 40.
Prajapatir dharmapatir ekada niyaman yaman badram par prajanam anvichan adhishtat svartakam yaya.
Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thus, once upon a time, the forefather of living entities and the father of religiousness, Lord Brahma, situated himself in act of regulative principles, desiring self-interest for the welfare of all living entities.
So this verse says Ekada. Ekada means once upon a time. So like Brahma received this, he did the creation. And then once upon a time when he actually Prajapati, we have heard this, means Brahma, the forefather of all living entities. Dharmapati, he is the father of all religious life. He himself, Atishtat, he situated himself in Niyaman. Niyaman means rules and regulations or acts of regulative principle. So once Brahma actually, when the process of creation was there, after that, once upon a time, he actually sat in this, situated himself in this Niyaman, in this process of regulative principles, Anvichan Swa Arthakamya, desiring the self-interest for the welfare of all living entities. So what is this actually referring to? Actually, this, starting from this verse and the next 5 verses, now in second canto, chapter 5, right? We read that entire conversation where Narada, he actually comes to Brahma and he asks him 6 questions, right? Now, these 5 verses are actually setting these, giving the information of the situation under which that conversation between Brahma and Narada actually took place. Okay? So if you say Chatushloki Bhagavatam, everything is coming from that. So Brahma received the knowledge, and then Brahma is giving it to Narada, which we already discussed in 5th chapter, but that episode happened after Brahma received the knowledge of the Chatushloki. So next, these 5 verses will give the entire situation under which Brahma, Narad Muni approached Brahma. Okay, so yeah, so that's the thing. And then Prabhupada in the purport, he gives this point that Brahma himself is actually undertaking this life of rules and regulations. Yeah? So Prabhupada saying, without having undertaken a regulative life of rules and regulations, one cannot be situated in exalted position. So main point is that, when we talk about devotee, exalted devotee, that means that, the state of being exalted or being advanced, one has to undertake that regulative life of rules and regulations. It's not like an automatic that, oh yeah, I get up and all of a sudden, like Prabhupada says, sometimes there is this guru and disciple, and then guru just says, okay, you come to me, I will give you all my potency, and just like an electrical charge, it goes from the guru and the disciple to the disciple, and the guru says, oh, now I am totally exhausted because I've given you everything. Prabhupada says, that is not the process. The process is the guru will give instruction and the disciple has to take up the process of rules and regulations. And Brahma himself is doing that just to set the example, just for the welfare of all living entities. Right? Prajanam Badram. Badram means for the welfare of all the Praja. Brahma himself is doing it. Right? So he is teaching others by his own example. Okay. Okay, and then Prabhupada says, anyone who is actually desiring Badram, Badram means auspiciousness for the member of his own family, he must actually live a moral, religious life, not just like an unrestricted life of sense gratification. And what is the highest life of moral principle is to become a devotee of Lord Shri Krishna. And Prabhupada quotes, further makes a point, the one who is not a devotee, not a devotee, he basically makes the point. The quotes the verse, Yasyasi Bhagavati Bhagavad Akinchana Sarver Gune Satra Samasasten Sura 5, 18, 12 of Bhagavatam makes this point that only a devotee, actually, when one is engaged in devotional service, he automatically gets all the good qualities, even of the Suraha, of the demigods. Right? So hence, to actually, Prabhupada is making the point, to actually have the Badram or the auspiciousness for all the members of the family or generations to come, one must live a life based on moral religious principles, and the highest moral religious principle is to become a devotee of the Lord. And then the last sentence Prabhupada says that pure devotees of the Lord, like Brahma and persons in the chain of disciplic succession, do not do anything to instruct their subordinates without acting accordingly themselves. Right? So we make this point. There's achar and there's prachar. Right? Achar is actually our own behavior, that we ourselves have taken up this process of devotion. Like Prabhupada tells a story about Mahatma Gandhi. Right? Is it Prabhupada or? And we have heard it many times, that someone came, one mother came to Mahatma Gandhi and said, oh, can you tell my son not to eat so many sweets? You know, and then he said, like, okay, come back next week. I'll let him know. And then she comes back next week. And then he says, okay, don't eat many sweets. The mother said, if that is what you had to say, why didn't you take it and say that last week? And then the person said that actually I myself was eating so many sweets. So I had to personally, like for the last week, restrict myself from eating sweets. Only then can I actually give an instruction. If I'm not following, how can I give an instruction? Right? So similarly, the point of achar and prachar, our preaching will not be effective unless we ourselves actually engage in the process of sadhana bhakti. The more we are sincerely engaged in the principles of devotional service, the more we are empowered by Krishna to actually preach the message of Krishna consciousness. So both achar and prachar. So Brahma himself is actually like, yes, he is instructing Narad Muni, but he himself is showing the example of performing all the principles before instructing Narada. Okay. Next verse, 41.
Tam Narada Priyatamo Vikta Danam Anuvrataha Shushu Mana Shilena Prashrayena Damena Cha.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Narada, the most dear of the inheritor sons of Brahma, always ready to serve his father, strictly follows the instructions of his father by his mannerly behavior, meekness, and sense control. Hare Krishna.
So now in this verse, so text 40 actually said what Brahma did to make himself qualified to give the knowledge, right? He himself actually did the whole process to set the right example. And then here in 41, it's saying the qualifications of Narad Muni to receive this knowledge of the previous section of the second canto. Tam Narada Priyatamo. He said, unto Narada, Priyatamaha means, Tamaha means the best or the most dear. So he said, Narada, the most dear son of Brahmaji. And why is Narada considered the most dear son of Brahma? Right? So in this verse, the qualities of Narada are actually described to make him the most dear son of Brahmaji. First quality, it says, Rikta Dhanam. Rikta Danam. Danam means to receive or to inherit, right? So one who actually inherits the property of the father. Right? So this is actually explained in the next purport. Prabhupada explains this, that Brahma, he had the wealth of Karma Kanda, he had the wealth of Jnana Kanda, he had the wealth of Upasana Kanda or Bhakti Yoga. Right? So he had all these wealth. And then Daksha and some other people, they took the property of Karma Kanda. The four Kumaras, they inherited the property of Jnana Kanda. But it was Narada who actually inherited this property of Bhakti or Upasana Kanda. And hence, Narada became the most dear son of Brahmaji because he inherited the thing that Brahma really, felt that this is the highest. Brahma himself is like, establishing that Bhakti Yoga is the highest. So he said Narada has actually taken that property and he is the one who is distributing it. And hence he became the most dear Priyatama, son of Brahmaji. And then further, the rest of the verse is just is again further elaborating the qualities of Narada. Anuvrataha. Anuvrata means the obedient son of Brahmaji. Whatever Brahma said, Narada was actually following. He's an obedient son. Then Shushru Samanaha is always ready to serve his father. Brahma's instruction is that Narad Muni is immediately ready to follow. Shilena. Shilena means good behavior. Then Prashayena means by humility or meekness. And Damena, sense control. So 6 qualities of Narad Muni are described in this verse that makes Narad Muni Priyatama, the most dear son of Brahmaji. Okay. Next verse, there's no purport to this. So, text 42.
Mayam vivitishan Vishnur Mayeshasya Mahamunihi Mahabhagavato Rajan Pitaram Paryato Shayat.
Hare Krishna. Narada very much pleased his father and desired to know all about the energies of Vishnu, the master of all energies. For Narada was the greatest of all sages and greatest of all devotees, O king.
So we'll start with the last line. It says, Pitaram Parayot Shayat. Because Narada, by his good qualities, had actually very much pleased his father, right? And because he pleased his father, hence it says, Mayam Vividishan Vishnu. He actually approached Brahma, desiring to know about the Maya. Maya means what? The material energy of the Lord. And if you remember the questions that Narad Muni asked to Brahmaji in 2.5, right? So those are the questions. So basically that desiring to know the material energies of Vishnu. Vishnu Maya Ishasya. Vishnu who is the Isha. Isha means the master or the controller of Maya. Right? So that is Vishnu Maya Ishasya. And then Mahamuni and Mahabhagavata. So again glorifying Narad Muni as the best of all sages, Mahamuni, and Mahabhagavata, the greatest of all devotees. Right? So it's interesting when we are reading this verse 40, 41, and 42, we are getting the qualities of Brahmaji, we are getting the qualities of Narada, and it's actually said because of those good qualities, Narada has pleased Brahma, and hence Narada has qualified himself to receive the knowledge from Brahmaji. Right? So hence he is described as Mahamuni and Mahabhagavata. He's the greatest of sages and he's the greatest of devotees, and hence he is actually approaching Brahmaji to know the answer, to know about the material energies of Vishnu, who is the master of all the energies. So Prabhupada in the purport, he actually makes a point. He says that Brahma, he says Brahma, being the greatest living entity within the universe, must know more than anyone within this universe. Brahma, being the greatest living entity in this universe, must know more than anyone within this universe about the Supreme Personality of God. The knowledge about Lord Shri Krishna is unlimited, but Brahma, being the greatest, must know the maximum of all living entities, right? Hence, because we are coming in the knowledge, we are receiving knowledge coming from Brahma, Narada, Vyas, and so on, we should, so Prabhupada actually making the point that we should actually approach Brahma or approach a representative of Brahma to know more and more about the unlimited Lord. Right? So Prabhupada says the duty of everyone to ask about this unlimited Lord from the spiritual master in the Disciplic Sastra coming from Brahma himself. So Lord is unlimited, right? But Brahma, being the greatest living being here, knows that unlimited. And hence for us, insignificant jivas, it's our duty to know more and more about that Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we should ask more and more questions to know about the Lord himself. 43.
Tushtam nishamya pitaram lokanam prapitamaham devarshi paripapracha bhavan yanmanu prichati.
The great sage Narada also inquired in detail from his father, Brahma, the great grandfather of all the universe, after seeing him well satisfied.
So again, like, the point is like in the previous verse, the last word was Paryatoshaya. He very much pleased Brahmaji. And this verse is again making the point. Tushtam niyasham pitaram. After pleasing his father, Pitaram. So Prabhupada makes this excellent point in the purport that the spiritual master's satisfaction is the means of assimilating transcendental knowledge. So this is like, one of those quotes, you can frame it on your wall, right? Spiritual master's satisfaction is the means of assimilating transcendental knowledge. Only by pleasing the Guru can we actually receive knowledge from him. And this is repeatedly pointed out in last verse and this verse. Tushtam, satisfied, right? So after Brahma being satisfied by seeing Narad Muni's his character, and also how he has taken this aspect of bhakti, and how Narad Muni is the one who's actually going all around and distributing this knowledge to Prahlad, to Dhruva, to Vyasadeva, to the hunter, Migrari, all these people. It is Narad Muni who is actually distributing. So Brahmaji became very pleased with Narad Muni, and hence, okay, so that's the first line, Tushtam Nisham Pitaram, Lokanam Prapitamahan. So here it's saying, right, so after seeing, after being pleased by Narad Muni, right, and Devarshi Pariprashaya, the great sage actually inquired from Pitaram Lokanam Prapitamahan. So Devarshi referring to Narad Muni himself, he actually inquired Pitaram Lokanam, the father of the whole Loka, that is father of the whole universe, and Prapitamahan, the great grandfather. And then Bhavan Anuprichati. Bhavan Anuprichati means Sukadev Goswami is telling Parikshit Maharaj, you asked me so many questions in the 8th chapter of the second canto. Right? Second canto was mainly like a whole list of questions. You asked me a question. Similarly, the same questions were asked by Narada to Brahma. Right? And hence it actually goes back from 2.5 onwards and Brahma Narada Samvad. Okay, so Prabhupada in his purport quotes about, makes the point that, when the spiritual master is giving some knowledge to the disciple, it's not that the spiritual master is like a paid agent. It's not that, how a student may go to a teacher and receive knowledge, and then for that he's paying the teacher, I'm giving you my tuition fees, and then based on that I'm receiving knowledge. But relationship between disciple and guru is not based on an exchange of dollars or so on. It's a proper making the point. The process of receiving knowledge is tadvidi paripatina pariprashnena sevaya upatekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. So to receive the knowledge, one has to have these qualities of surrender, submission. One has to have the quality of asking questions, inquiry, right? How we made the point in previous purport. The duty of the disciple to know more and more about the unlimited Lord. So there has to be inquiry. And third is the point of service. Right? Only when these three aspects are there from the disciple side will the Guru actually be pleased and reveal the knowledge to us. And then Prabhupada quotes that verse, Yasya deve parabhakti yatha deve tatha guru tasya kathita yartha prakashante mahatmana. Only unto those who have Yasya deve parabhakti, who have unflinching faith in both the Guru and Krishna, only that person can receive this transcendental knowledge. And then Prabhupada actually further, he actually makes the point that one who is a disciple is the next spiritual master. So if we are disciples, that means that we shouldn't just stop at that. Yes, we have received the knowledge. No. Once you receive the knowledge, you become the Guru and you distribute. It's Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instruction, right? Amara agya hai, Guru hoy tara edesh. You yourself become a Guru. But I'm not qualified. It's okay. You have the order directly from me. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself is giving the order. You become a Guru. You become a Guru. So on the direction of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, every disciple is the next spiritual master. And then one cannot become a spiritual master unless one has strictly served his spiritual master, strictly being obedient to the orders of his spiritual master, and so on. And then Prabhupada, he concludes the purport by saying that how, this aspect of, we read previously how Narad Muni's one quality was damena, or self-control. And Prabhupada stresses on this point that one cannot become a Guru unless he is actually self-controlled. Right? And then Prabhupada says one who is not self-controlled, especially in sex life, can neither become a disciple nor a spiritual master. And then he basically is referring to the verse Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udharo Prastha Vegam, Etan Vegan, Yo Vishay Dhira, Sarvam Apivam Prithvim Sa Shishya. The first verse of Nectar of Instruction. That unless we have control of and the speech, the mind, the anger, and then tongue, the belly, the genitals, like unless we have control over this, one cannot become a qualified Guru. Right? And Prabhupada is saying, unless you are a qualified disciple, you cannot become a qualified Guru. Okay. Yeah, so that's the purpose. Yeah, and Prabhupada talks of disciplinary training. So we have to go through that disciplinary training, discipline in our spiritual life. Unless we have that discipline in our spiritual life, we cannot become a disciple. And if you are not a good disciple, you cannot become a Guru. Okay. 44. Let me tell one story. I know we're going through verses, but there's this story of Prabhupada in Hyderabad. There was this, you must be knowing, in Hyderabad, there's this big Pandal program, like how they did in Bombay, which was very, very successful. Similarly, they did a Pandal program in Hyderabad. And then Prabhupada was once sitting with his initiated disciples, and one teenage Indian boy, he had actually spent the night with the disciples. He was very, happy with, like very impressed by the devotees. And then he spent the whole night. And next day, when Prabhupada was sitting with his initiated disciples, this boy, which had just spent one night, he came and he sat in the same assembly. And Prabhupada, he just looked at the boy and he showed his finger out to the door. He didn't say anything. He just showed like this. And the boy stood up, like just telling him that you have to leave. And this is like, why would Prabhupada do that? And then Prabhupada actually said, as soon as Prabhupada saw the boy, he pointed to the door without saying a word. The boy also said nothing, but got up and left. And Srila Prabhupada turned to his senior disciples and he said, first, he must wash all the pots. And then he'll be qualified to come and receive instructions from me. And Prabhupada made the point that Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, he used to test the sincerity of a disciple by asking them to go and do humble service, particularly to go and wash pots. So that's like such a strong instruction that unless we show that that mood of like a sincerity to take up any humble service for the service of the Guru, The Guru, why would the Guru actually give us instructions? But with that mood of utter humility and sincerity, where you are doing any service, or the Guru says, go do this, sure, Guru Maharaj, I'll go and do it. With that sincerity, the Guru actually becomes pleased, and then he gives us knowledge. Okay, so let's go, text 44.
Tasma idam bhagavatam puranam dasha lakshanam proktam bhagavata praha prita putraya bhutakrit. Thereupon, the supplementary Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, which was described by the personality of Godhead and which contains 10 characteristics, was told with satisfaction by the father Brahma to his son Narada.
So this is actually referring back to section 2.5, Canto 2, chapter 5. So here it says, thereupon. So when Narad Muni asked that I want to know more about this Maya Shakti of Lord Vishnu, then Brahma gave that knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam to Narad Muni, right? The same way how he received it from Bhagavata, from the Supreme Personality of God. That Chatushloki he received, the same knowledge he actually gave it to Narada, right? Was told with satisfaction by the father to the son. Either praha means said, putraya, to the son, he actually gave this knowledge. So Prabhupada, and also another important word here is Dasha Lakshana. Dasha Lakshana means 10 characteristics. Right? So this will be our theme for the next chapter, where we'll read the 10 characteristics of this Purana, the Bhagavatam. Right? Bhagavad Purana, 10 characteristics will be discussed in the next section, next chapter. Okay, so Prabhupada talks about this, and how there are 10 characteristics of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that will be described in the next chapter. And Prabhupada actually says these 4 verses, these 4 nutshell verses, they are actually the seed of all knowledge, and that one should not consider, okay, I know the 4 verses of Chatushloki, now I don't need to read the remaining 17,996 verses. No need. 4 verses, enough. No. Those are just the nutshell verses. From that, the remaining entire Bhagavatam, 18,000 verses, have been just to explain these 4 verses. Right? So 10 characteristics requires so many verses just to explain them properly. So Brahmaji, he also, like if you remember, after the conclusion of the Brahma Narada Samvad, what did Brahma tell Narada? That I have given you this knowledge, now you expand and you distribute this knowledge. So Prabhupada is saying, so Krishna gave 4 verses to Brahmaji and told him, you expand on this and you distribute. Brahma is giving the same knowledge to Narada. He's saying, I gave you the knowledge in chapters 5, 6, and 7. Now you take the knowledge, you expand it. And similarly, Prabhupada is saying, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave Rupa Goswami knowledge in a nutshell, and he said, Rupa Goswami, you go, you expand. Right? So similarly, Prabhupada is saying, this Srimad Bhagavatam actually is unlimited. Not just 18,000 verses. It is unlimited verses, unlimited knowledge. That means anyone who actually properly has received the knowledge of the Bhagavatam, like, based on the previous verses, with all the qualifications of the bona fide guru and the disciple, he can take the knowledge and then he can expand upon it. He can expand upon it. Like how the first verse of the Bhagavatam, right? Long purport, right? And then we hear how Bhakti Sansari Thakur, he spoke on the first verse of the Bhagavatam for 3 months. And he said he's just touched the verse. There's so much more to say. So anyone who is a qualified disciple can take the Bhagavatam and then speak so much. Actually, if you go to, I'm sure everyone knows this website, SrimadBhagavatamClass.com, or SrimadBhagavatamClasses.com, or just class.com. You just search SrimadBhagavatamClass.com. In that, you can actually look up a verse, right? Go to a verse and see a number of speakers who have spoken. What is actually, and that's not the whole list, but what is actually there on ISKCON Desire Tree. So for one verse, you have so many speakers. And that verse is spoken in every temple, because every temple they go through Bhagavatam. All ISKCON temples, that verse explanation is there. And just one verse, how many explanations are there? You know, and it's not that everyone who's giving Bhagavatam class on one particular verse is going to talk of that, a particular theme. He'll touch on so many points. So Prabhupada is actually making the point, these 4 verses can be explained in because Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna himself. Glory of Krishna is unlimited, and hence Bhagavatam is actually unlimited. So what to talk of 4 verses? What to talk of 18,000 verses? Srimad Bhagavatam could be explained in 4 billion verses. So imagine if we had Bhagavatam of 4 billion verses. It would take us, I know how many lifetimes to do a Bhakti Vaibhav course on the Bhagavatam. 4 billion verses. Imagine. So Prabhupada says, similarly, simultaneously explaining 4 verses and 4 billion verses, all the same, in as much as the Lord is within the atom, and also the Lord is unlimited. So similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam can be said 4 verses, how the Lord is present within the atom. Similarly, the Lord is unlimited, so Bhagavatam itself is unlimited. So when anyone is actually getting a set of Bhagavatam, actually they're getting unlimited knowledge, not just 18,000 verses. Every shloka has unlimited knowledge. It's Krishna himself. So very beautiful. And then the last verse, there are 2 more, okay, 45 and 46.
Narayaha munaye sarasvatyastate nripa dhyayate brahma paramam vyasayamita tejase.
Who's next?
Shri Radhe Mataji, Nikhat Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. In succession, O King, the great says Narada instructed Srimad Bhagavatam onto the unlimitedly powerful Vasudeva, who meditated in devotional service upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, on the bank of the river Saraswati. Hare Krishna.
So if you see from the 4 verses, after the 4 verses, now we say, oh, Brahma instructed Narada. Go back to 2nd canto, chapter 5, 6, 7. Now, this verse is saying Narada Praha Munaye. Narada gave this knowledge to who? Munaye, the great sage Vyasadeva. And where did he do it? Saraswati Tate, on the banks of Saraswati. Where did we read this? In Bhagavata, chapters 4, 5, 6. So if you see from the nutshell, now we are going back and saying, actually 2.5, 2.6, 2.7 is coming from nutshell. Actually 1.4, 1.5, 1.6 of Bhagavatam is coming from the nutshell. So nutshell is the origin of all knowledge. So here it says, Narada gave to Vyasa, Saraswati Tate, at the banks of Saraswati, Dhyayate Brahma Paramam, Vyasa Mita Tejase. Right? So Vyasa, again directly, unto Vyasadev, and Amita Tejase, who is actually unlimited and powerful. So it is interesting that whenever it is said Brahma gave knowledge to Narada, the qualities of Narada are described to receive the knowledge. Narada gave knowledge to Vyasadeva. Qualities of Vyasadeva are described to receive the knowledge. That tells us that Prabhupada actually makes this point, that Bhagavatam is not for just any unqualified person. To receive this knowledge of Bhagavatam, we have to make ourselves qualified to receive this knowledge. And hence, in this verse, it talks of the glories of Vyasadeva. He is unlimitedly powerful, and hence he is actually qualified to be a recipient of this knowledge. And hence, Narad Muni gave this. So, Prabhupada, in the purport, to make this point, he actually quotes this verse from 1:5:13. Aho Mahabhaga Bhavan Amogadrik. So basically, he's saying, this verse is saying Mahabhaga, where Narad Muni is saying Vyasadeva. He's saying, you are highly fortunate, Mahabhaga. You are Amogadrik. Your vision is actually perfect, right? Suchihi, you are spotless. Shravaha, you are actually famous. Satya Rato means you have taken the vow of truthfulness. Dhrita Vrataha, you are fixed in spiritual qualities. And hence, I am giving you this knowledge. So, yeah, so Prabhupada, right. Okay, Prabhupada in this purport, he actually talks of the point about Dhyayate Brahma Paramam, right? Dhyayate Paramam. So we know that how after the conversation, Vyasadeva, he actually meditated on Paramam Brahma, Supreme Brahman, right? So Prabhupada goes that Supreme Brahman is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And, if it was just the impersonal understanding, why would Narada ask Vyasa to meditate on the personal form of the Lord? So Prabhupada makes that. And then he quotes, how do we know Param Brahma is actually referring to Lord Sri Krishna himself? In the Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter, after Chatushloki, then Arjun says, Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram Param Bhavan, Purusham Shashvatam Divyam, Adi Devam Ajam Vibhu. He says, you, Krishna, you are the Param Brahma. You are the Param Dhama. Right? So now, Narad Muni is actually saying, Vyasa, if you meditate on Param Brahma, that is Lord Sri Krishna himself. Otherwise, if the form of the Lord was temporary, why would Narad Muni ask Vyasadeva to meditate on that form? And then we know that how Vyasadeva, after he meditated, Bhakti Yogaina Manasi, Samyak Pranihite Male, Apashyatat Purusham, what is this? Apashyatat Purusham Purnam Mayam Tat Cha Tad Ashraya. Right? So basically, he fixed in mind, and then what did he see? Samyak Pranahita Male. By engaging in devotional service, without any tinge of materialism, he saw Apashyatam Purusham Purnam. He saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Mayam Cha Tad Apashraya. Maya, who was standing behind the Lord. Right? So therefore, perfect meditation is realization of the personality of Godhead along with his transcendental activities. So when Vyasadeva saw in meditation, he saw the Lord, he saw he saw Purnam, right? Purnam Purusham. He saw the Lord with all the expansion, and then he saw Maya Devi, and he saw the living entities. He saw everything in his meditation, right? So hence Prabhupada is saying the perfection of meditation is realization of the personality of Godhead along with his activities. Along with the activities. So the activities also are not Maya. They are all transcendental. They are eternal. Okay. And the last verse of this one, chapter 36.
Yad utaham tvaya prishto vairad purushadidam yata sitat apupakyaste prashnan anyam strakrit nashaha.
O king, your questions as to how the universe became manifested from the gigantic form of the personality of Godhead, as well as other questions, I shall answer in detail by explanation of the 4 verses already mentioned.
Right. So this is a proof that the rest of the Bhagavatam is coming from these 4 verses. So Sukadeva Goswami is saying, O Parikshit, O Maharaj Parikshit, you ask me questions about Virajat. Virajat referring to the universal form. Purusha, the gigantic form of the personality of Godhead. And I will answer, Upakhyasate. I will explain all your questions. You have asked me so many questions. I will explain all your questions by explaining these 4 verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? So hence these Bhagavatam verses are Chatushloki, from which all the knowledge is actually coming. So Prabhupada is saying, he's saying all the questions that can be humanly possibly asked about the universal creation, all the answers are there in Srimad Bhagavatam. Because we said Bhagavatam is unlimited, right? So any question that you ask about this universal creation, any question you ask about the absolute truth, all the answers are there in Bhagavatam. Everything, anything humanly possible you can ask, it is there in the Bhagavatam. The answers depend only on the qualification of the person. Like that means that the answers are there, but someone may read and say like, oh, I don't know, I didn't find in Bhagavatam the answers. Well, we are not qualified. The answers are there. So answers depend only on the qualification of the speaker of the Bhagavatam. And then Bhagavatam is proper saying, the Bhagavatam are the limit, the highest limit of all questions, and all the answers are there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And hence all the intelligent person will derive all intellectual benefits from this knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay? So that's how this chapter ends. That's chapter number 9 of the second canto. Okay. So in today's discussion, we went through, like, after Chatushloki, few questions we answered, and then we actually started from after the verse after Chatushloki, how Lord has actually asked Brahma that you always keep this, meditate with full concentration, contemplate these 4 verses, and if you're always aware of this knowledge, then you will not fall into illusion. Right? And then after we read that how after giving all this knowledge, then the Lord disappeared, and then Brahma, with that humble mood of devotion, with that mood of submission, he started to create as it was previously created. So it's another day of Brahma's creation. And then after we read that how this same knowledge that Brahma received was actually given to Narada. Under what circumstances was the knowledge given to Narada? We talked of qualification of Brahma, qualification of Guru, qualification of disciple, qualification of Narada to receive this knowledge, and why Narada is the most dear son of Brahma. And then after that, 5 verses giving the entire situation when Brahma Narada Samvad took place. Then the next part was how Narada Vyasa Samvad took place, right? Narada Vyasa. And then conclusion is Sukadeva coming to Parikshit and saying, I'll answer all your questions, but from these 4 nutshell verses. Okay. So we'll stop here. So let's take any questions or any comments or realizations. Then we'll take a break and then we'll start the next chapter.
If we see that word-to-word translation of 46, the 4 verses is not mentioned. It is mentioned in detail. So that's what we mean by we should always listen to how the acharyas explain, then only we will be able to get the answer correctly.
So, see, one thing is in the Sanskrit, we see, that's a very nice point that, we may not, just by Sanskrit, we may not able to get that, 4 shlokas. But if you see, it says, Yat Uta, whatever was spoken, and then what is that, which is this what referring to? It's actually referring to the Chatushloki. Whatever was spoken by Krishna to Narada, based on that, I am going to elaborate on this. So you won't find the word Chatu, that 4, but it is actually what was spoken, that is actually being explained. So, thank you. Yes, Karuna Mataji.
I was just fascinated in the purport to text 43, where Prabhupada mentions that Brahmaji, we shouldn't consider him to be a dead great-grandfather, as we have experienced on this planet, but that Brahmaji and Narada, that they're still alive. It's hard for me to fathom, it just fascinated the devil out of me.
That's amazing. Like in our material lineage, great-grandfather passed and all that. But here in our spiritual lineage, actually everyone is there. Brahma is there, Narada is there. And actually all our spiritual teachers, all our acharyas in the line, Brahma, Narada, they are actually still there in one way. But even our acharyas, it says that how when we go to the samadhi of these acharyas, in the holy dham, they are actually gateways through which you can connect to the acharyas. That means the acharya is still there. Bhakti Saraswati Thakur is still there. You can pray to him on his appearance day and get his mercy. You can pray to Rupa Goswami. All of them are still there. So that's a wonderful point. So you can connect to all these previous acharyas going all the way to Brahmaji. Thank you. Anything else?
So in verse 38, 39, there is a use of Lord's name, Hari. Hari is one who takes away everything. Is there a significance why it's used in both these verses?
That's a good question. Let me think about it. There's nothing on the Prabhupada and Vishwacharya Thakur have not explained anything referring to that word Hari. But we can think about it that because, we know every time when there's a particular name of the Lord, there is certainly some significance to it, right? So in 38, is there mention? It's only in 39, right? Oh, in 38 also, Dhari, yeah. Yeah, last word. The Lord, the personality of Godhead.
Prabhuji, both these verses are mentioning about that Lord disappeared. So probably that's why the word Hari is used. He disappeared, but he takes away all our miseries, all our ignorance, after giving knowledge. just
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, it's a good question actually. We should think about these points like even beyond like, okay, why Hari and what's the significance of Hari? Yeah. Prabhu, you have any thoughts? Gopinath Prabhu? Why Hari?
No, I was just thinking, he's removing the ignorance of Lord Brahma, and maybe that's the relation. But
Yeah.
So,
Like he's appeared and he's removed the ignorance of Lord Brahma by speaking the Chatushlokis. So that I think is the best explanation of the Hari. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
The purport of 39, it says Lord Brahma thus engaged his senses in the Lord by recreating the conditioned living entities to act in the recreated universe.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, did he not start at that point? Is it just a repetition? Because it says recreating.
What is your question, Mati?
Why does he say recreating the conditioned living entities to act in the? I thought after receiving the blessings from when Lord Brahma started the creation, right? So why does he say recreating?
Because the creation was there in the previous day of Brahma, right? So previous day of Brahma, there was a whole creation, and then when Brahma goes to sleep at night, then there's annihilation. So he's recreating from the previous day of Brahma. So every day of Brahma, that is actually in the morning when he wakes up. Imagine for us, like we wake up in the morning and then we are just like out in nowhere and you have to like start from scratch, build our house, build our family, like everything. For Brahma, it's like every day he wakes up in the morning, it's like, oh, I just created yesterday, but all that is gone. I have to start from scratch. So he's recreating every day he recreates the universe. And also like all the, when you talk of like recreating the conditioned jivas, that means again he has to give like 8.4 million species of life, give the bodies for everyone. So that's again, but it's already there. Every day of Brahma, this is there, but the cycle, goes. It's created, annihilated, created, annihilated. So it's just recreation. Does that answer?
Because it's totally engaged in the sense of the Lord. Brahma started creation, right? So I thought it was the first, and then it will go on and on. But I got a little confused there. But thank you for the explanation.
Yeah, so we also mentioned the point that how in the previous day of Brahma, that's when he was doing the creation, he was bewildered by his own daughter, that Vak episode. It was previous day of Brahma. So certainly this is not like when Brahma was born. This is actually one of the days of Brahma.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, ma'am.
So I also have a question, like if he recreating and it was created before, so every day the Lord appeared and he gave the knowledge to the Brahmaji, or how is it, Prabhuji?
Like every day actually. When Brahma wakes up in the morning, he's forgetful about like how do I create? And every day morning he actually, but how it happens, like how like here it was Krishna himself who came. Now that may not happen every day. That is unique. That Chatushloki Bhagavatam and Krishna himself as a cowherd boy appearing, that is only today of Brahma. But every day of Brahma, this may not happen. But
that is exactly my Mataji put it in a better way. That's exactly my question too. But I
previous day of Brahma also, like in the morning when he wakes up, again he has to like he does meditation, he gets the knowledge, and then he actually does the task of creation. So that whole process is there. But who actually comes, to what extent that realization is, that differs. But every day when Brahma wakes up, like, okay, darkness, now I have to create. Because see, every day Brahma is setting an example for all that living entities through the entire day. So he himself is in ignorance, and he actually gets the knowledge, and that's the knowledge he propagates throughout the entire day of someone. Is it, am I missing something in the question? Or?
I don't know, yes. Same thing, like it's like the world was recreate. So it means Brahmaji is recreating every time, and every time the Lord is appearing and giving the knowledge to Brahmaji.
Yeah,
Yes,
every day. That's right.
Yes, and one more thing, like whenever, like after the creation, so we have heard like the demigods, they get in a trouble, and the Purusha Suktam prayers are there, and they go to the Shirodaksha Vishnu, and then they pray. And that time it is said even Brahma is not accessible to the darshan of the Lord, and just the sound vibration is there, and they communicate, and then it happened. But here in this chapter it is said like Lord appear and Brahmaji is considered as his friend. So it's little difficult to digest, Prabhuji, like how is like he's a friend also. And
yeah, so in the 10th canto it describes that how, when there was a problem, then the demigods went, and Brahma took all the demigods, they went to the Kshira ocean, and on the banks they actually presented the Purusha Sukta prayers. So at that time it is actually given that Krishna spoke to Brahma in his heart. He gave the instruction that, now I myself am going to appear, and then you all demigods, you shake birth and fire. So Krishna spoke to Brahma in his heart. So one way, yes, Krishna, Brahma receiving direct darshan of the Lord, or Brahma receiving the words of the Lord. One way they are not different. So even there, one can say that Krishna has appeared to Brahma, but in the sound form and giving him instructions. So certainly, like Krishna, again, there also, by chanting of Purusha Sukta prayers, Krishna, or there is Shirodaksha Vishnu, he's actually pleased, and hence he's actually giving the knowledge. Right? So the same thing is there. So there also Krishna is revealing, or Shirodaksha Vishnu is revealing, coming to Brahma and relating. So that's one point I can say. And the second point is also, see, there are certain things that with Brahma that happen as a course of creation. With the demigods, then he is wearing more of a hat of a creator rather than a hat of a devotee of the Lord. So he's like in the role of a creator, demigods are coming, he has to do his function. So he's going, and then he's with the demigods chanting Purusha Sukta, sitting in meditation. That his role is, I'm the creator. And Krishna relates to him as a creator and says, okay, this is your instruction, do this. But then in his personal meditation, Krishna may come and have rasa with him as a friend. So it's like two different roles, because even at that point, see, if Krishna at that point when Purusha Sukta prayers are chanted, first of all, the Purusha Sukta prayers are chanted with that mood of awe and reverence. Right? It says like Sahasra Shisha Purushaha, oh 1,000-headed Lord, and so on. Right? So at that time, certainly like Krishna coming and shaking hand of Brahma would be too intimate, like all the demigods, they are not qualified to see that happen. So, and based on that circumstance, Krishna is still reciprocating in Brahma, but through voice rather than in person. But there's no difference between Krishna's voice and Krishna's person. Is that helpful?
Yes, it's helpful. And sorry, one more small question, which like when Brahmaji he spoke the Brahma Samhita, so it is there, but it's around 55 verses is there. So, but we start from the around 26th verse and onwards, and when there was some yagyas or something is there, we recite from there. So at the beginning, which is not being generally spoken, why is it, Prabhuji?
Like the first few verses, like if you see, the Brahma Samhita is actually talking about the entire aspect of creation, actually. The first few verses actually talks of the structure of the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan, how it is in the the 4 lotus stems and the directions and who is situated there. And after that is the creation aspect. But the direct glorification of the Lord particularly Goloka Vrindavan, starts with that Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Viteshu Survira. So, this is more of a Gaudiya thing, our Gaudiya, that we want to glorify who? Nanda Nandan Krishna. Yes, that other aspect of Brahma Samhita, we are not saying it's not important, but we are focusing more on the direct glorification of Goloka Vrindavan, because that is the mood of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So,
Thank you.
okay, anything else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So one mundane silly question. Just like Brahma is also a jiva and he lives for his 100 years. And like our jivas in this material world, we go through first phases 20 years and then 20 to 30. You have those phases. Does Brahma also go through those phases? Brahmacharya and like that.
Actually, it's see, as soon as we go higher up, so in this earth we see birth, growth, old age, disease, death. Right? Even if you go up to Swarga Loka, there also it is not so much of going so much through stages and getting old age, disease. It is there, but it is more subtle, in the sense that even demigods, it's not that, they have demigod has cancer and because of cancer he's dying. That happens only here.
Okay.
There it is just a conception that one moment death is going to come. So someone may be healthy and youth, because the level of happiness is so much more higher. So they may have a look, but they know at one time, as soon as that, I am supposed that destiny is going to, my past credits are going to end, death is going to come. So it is not out of a disease that people are dying, but there also the fear of death is there. So that's also at Swargalok. So what to talk of Brahma? So there they are, the more higher you go, one way the more we are going towards the spiritual reality, in the sense. In spiritual world, it's just eternal form. So if you see Brahmaji also, he has a form, but there is death. But that death is not out of disease or old age, or it is just okay, death over Brahma, in a moment. Right? Brahma appeared in a moment, he died in a moment. Right? So Brahma was born. It wasn't that he was born as a baby on the lotus. Born as Brahmaji himself with 4 heads. And so as you go higher up, the transition which is so evident here in the earthly planet may not be visible.
I want to add to that question. Is there any description of Brahma in the scriptures? Because usually, in movies and other, pictures, they show Brahma as a very old person with beard and everything. So is there any description of Brahma in the scriptures?
I think in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when actually Gopkumar goes to see Brahmaji, that is a description of how Brahma is actually I have to check that section if there's a description of how Gopkumar sees Brahma. No, actually it's there in the first section, when Narad Muni is actually going through higher devotees and he goes to Brahma. Does anyone remember? Gopinath Prabhu, do you remember the description of the form of Brahma?
No, Guruji, I know he goes there, but not sure whether the description is given.
Okay. Let me check that. It should be there somewhere, but that's a good question to think about, because they always show Brahma forehead with white beard and, but is that really?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I think maybe in, I forgot actually this number, in the Brihad Upanishad or somewhere is there. I read long time back actually.
I think Brihad Bhagavatamrita would be a good reference to look at. So I'll search, and if I find, I'll post on the group. Okay, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and start the next chapter. Okay, so thank you so much. We'll meet in 5 minutes. Shri Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. So let's continue. We'll start with the last chapter of the second canto. Bhagavatam is the answer to all the questions. So we saw in the previous purport of text 45 how Prabhupada has actually made the point that how Bhagavatam, all the questions, or 46 purport, Prabhupada said, all the questions humanly possible, the answers are there in Bhagavatam. And also, we read about the verse Dasha. Dasha means 10 symptoms, like 10 characteristics. So in verse number in verse number 44, we see Puranam Dasha Lakshanam. That Purana which has 10 characteristics. So this chapter actually starts off by a description of the 10 characteristics of the Srimad Bhagavatam, or 10 subject matters of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? So this is like this 10 characteristics, like we all should memorize this verse so that it's like important to know the 10 important characteristics. I'll speak more about it in a minute. But let's start with text number 1.
Shishuka Uvacha Atra Sargo Visargascha Sthanam Poshanam Uttayaha Manvantare Shanu Kata Nirodho Muktir Ashrayaha.
Hare Krishna. Translation Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, sub-creation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of Manus, the science of God, returning home, back to Godhead, liberation, and Samnam Bonam. Hare Krishna.
Right, so this is a verse for memorization, very important verse, that these are the 10 characteristics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So if you see, there are so many Puranas, right? And many of the Puranas, like if you consider the 18 Puranas, they are, are addressing people in Sattva, Rajas, and Tama. Many of the Puranas, they actually just focus on 5 of these topics. But Srimad Bhagavatam is said to be a Mahapurana, because it is actually giving knowledge of all these 10 topics. Like even if you consider Vishnu Purana, right? Vishnu Purana, even that is actually just, it has these 10 characteristics, but the focus is on 5 of these 10 characteristics. And hence even Vishnu Purana is said to be like a minor Purana as compared to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it is only the Srimad Bhagavatam which is actually elaborately focusing on all these 10 topics. So what are these topics? It starts off with Sarga. Sarga means primary creation. Okay, so anyway, I just mentioned because the next few verses are going to elaborate on each one of these characteristics. Sarga means primary creation. Visarga means secondary creation. So one is creation from Mahavishnu, right, up to the point of creation of Brahma. Then from Brahma's creation is actually the secondary, Visarga. Then Sthanam. Sthanam means the different planetary systems. What are different 14 planetary systems, their description. Poshanam. Poshanam means how the Lord, he actually protects the living entities, protection. Uthaya. Uthaya or Uthi is what is the impulse, creative impetus. What is the impetus to actually work in this material world? Manvantaras. What are the different? So we know in the day of Brahma, 14 Manus are there. So how do the change of Manus happen, and who is the Manu in the 14 periods of Brahma? Ishanukata. Ishanukata is actually the science of God. Nirodha is going back home, back to Godhead. Mukti, liberation. And finally, the 10th topic is Ashraya. Ashraya means the Samambona. The Samambona. So these are the 10 topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the first few verses are going to elaborate on what these topics are. Okay, so let's go to text 2.
Text 2. Shudyartam navanam iha lakshanam varnayanti mahatmana shrutenartena chandrasa.
To isolate the transcendence of the Samambonam, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic inference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summary explanation given by the great sages.
So out of these 10, so Dashamasya, out of these 10, the Samam Bonam, right? To actually Vishuddha Artham, the essence of all these 10 characteristics is finally to point out the transcendence of the Samam Bonam. That means that the 10th topic, 10th topic, the Ashraya, is actually the conclusion of all the 9 topics is bringing one to the 10th topic of the Ashraya Tattva, or the shelter. Right? So Navanam Iha Lakshanam, the symptoms of the remaining 9 are described by Mahatmanam. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying, like, great devotees like Vidura and Maitreya, they have described all these different, have described these 9 symptoms only with the purpose of elaborating the 10th symptom, which is actually Ashraya, or the Samambonam, the ultimate supreme personality of Godhead. And how they have done it? Shrutena, through Vedic evidences, they're given evidences from different parts of the Vedas. Then by direct explanation, directly explaining the shlokas, or Agyasa, by summary explanation. So by these 3, they have actually established that the 9 topics are actually to impart the knowledge of the 10th topic, which is actually the shelter, Ashraya, or shelter on the Supreme Personality of God. Okay, so Prabhupada doesn't give a purport. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is actually making the point. Hence, because these 9 topics are finally meant to actually understand the 10th topic, or point out the exclusive nature of the Ashraya Tattva, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hence, when we are reading the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, we should study it with that one motive of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or accepting Krishna as our ultimate shelter. That should be our objective. So even when we be reading about Uthi, or one may reading different Manvantaras, but everything, like, we find some chapters of Bhagavatam where it's just names, okay, this is the person and his son, he got married to this is wife, and this wife has this child, and this child has this, and it's just like basically a genealogy. But even every section, which is actually in the section of Manvantara, every section of the Bhagavatam is finally to come to the point of Ashraya, the 10th topic of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, text 3.
Bhuta matrendriya dhiyam janma sarga udartaha brahmano guna vaishamyat visharga purusha smritaha.
The elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements: fire, water, land, air, and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind, is known as sarga, whereas subsequent resultant interaction of the modes of material nature is called visarga.
Okay. So now out of the 10 topics, the first 2 topics have been defined. So next few verses, like 2 topics will be defined, right? I mean, the topics will be defined, right? So in this verse, the first 2 are defined. So first 2 lines is actually saying Sarga Udaritaha. Udaritaha, referring to this is called Sarga, or the first aspect of the Bhagavatam, which is creation, right? And what is that? Bhuta Matendriya Dhyam. So the creation of the 5 elements, earth, water, air, fire, ether, right? And then the objects, which are objects perceived by the senses themselves, indriya, dhyam, the mind, right? So 5 bhuta elements, the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the 5 working senses, and the mind. 16 elements. So these 16 elements, they are actually created from Mahavishnu. So that, or Karandaksha Vishnu, so that aspect of the creation comes in Sarga. Okay. Then the next form, and even up to the revelation of the universal form description, that is all in the Sarga. Okay. Now, in the lines 3 and 4 says Brahmano Guna Vaisham. Brahmano here referring to Brahmaji himself. Guna Vaishamya, the interaction of the 3 gunas, right? This is actually called Vaisarga or Visarga, Paurusha Smrita. This is actually called Visarga. So this aspect of the creation following the original creation or the resultant creation, subsequent creation, due to the interaction of these elements after the birth of Brahma, that is called Visarga. Right? So Sarga and Visarga. So is this clear? The two topics, the first 2 topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, let's go further. Text 4.
Stitir Vaikunta Vijaya Poshanam Tat Anugraha Manvantarani Sadharma Utaya Karma Vasanaha.
The right situation for the living entities is to obey the laws of the Lord, and thus be in perfect peace of mind under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Manus and their laws are meant to give right direction in life. The impetus for activity is the desire for fruit of work.
So 4. So first 2 are explained, the next 4 are actually explained. If you see in this verse, the first line of the every 4 is actually the main points of the 10 aspects of creation, right? So we did Sarga, Visarga, then third one is Stanam or also Stitir, the same thing, Stitir. Then Poshanam, Manvantara, Uthaya, right? So 3, 4, 5, and 6 are actually described here. Now, what is Stanam or Stitir? Sthiti means the right situation of every jiva. And what is the right situation of every jiva? Vaikunta Vijaya. To actually accept the victory of the Lord. That means that the purpose of all living entities here in this material world is to accept the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? And in particular, the word Vijaya is actually used, or Jaya. That means that Lord Vaikunta is the one who is actually going to destroy all our sufferings and miseries in this material world. And hence the name Vaikunta Vijaya. He is the one who is actually going to destroy all the miseries and sufferings of all the jivas. So that is the first one. So the right situation for every jiva is to acknowledge the glories of the Lord. Then number 4, Poshanam. Poshanam means maintenance. Right? So how the Lord actually maintains all living beings. So from Karandaksha Vishnu, he actually expands into Garbhodaksha Vishnu and Shirodaksha Vishnu. And as Shirodaksha Vishnu, he is the super soul of everything. And he's actually a super soul who is actually maintaining all living entities. That is number 4, Poshanam. Number 5, Manvantara. Manvantarani Sadharma. So Prabhupada in the purport focuses a lot on this, that Manvantara, so we know the day of Brahma is divided into 14 Manu, right? And each one is ruled by a particular person, right? So Manvantara, right? So, and then Manvantarani Sadharma, right? So perfect occupational duty in various Manvantaras. So, like when Prabhupada elaborates on this word Sadharma. Okay, let me come back to that. Okay. So Manvantaran, okay, let's just go. Sadharma, so Prabhupada actually says in the purport, he says that the directive scriptures made by the Manus in different ages are called Sadharma, good guidance for the human beings who should take advantage of the revealed scripture for their own interest to make life's successful termination. So what is all these Manvantara, right? Manvantara Sadharma is basically all the different Manus. Like the Manu for us is Vaivashrata Manu, right? Vaivashrata Manu. And then in the Bhagavatam further, we are going to read about Swayambhuva Manu, right? And from this Manu, we have the Manu Samhita. So Manu Samhita is the guidebook for all living entities so that we can act in a way in this material world for our own interest so that our the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease can be terminated. Right? So that is the importance of Sadharma. When you talk of Manvantaras, they actually give the Manu Samhita, which actually establishes the perfect occupational duty for all of us. And then the last one is actually Uthi, right? So the Uthaya Karma Vasana. What is the impetus for everyone to work in this material world? The impetus to work is actually desire for fruitive results. So that is the topic number 6 of the Bhagavatam, where I will talk about, that the reason we are actually here in this material world, the reason we are actually working is that impetus is actually to gain something. So all the impressions produced by actions, whether that's higher or lower, everything is actually the topic number 6 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, now text number 5.
Avataranucharitam harishcha chashyanuvartitam pumsamisha kata prokta nana kyano pabrimhitaha.
Translation Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The science of God describes the incarnations of the personality of Godhead and his different activities together with the activities of his great devotees.
So this is topic number 7 of the 10 topics, right? So what is the main thing here? Ishanukatha, right? Isha Katha. So the science of God. And how is the science of God explained? The first line says Avatara and Anucharita. Avatar means the incarnations of God. Anucharita means the activities of God, right? So science of God is given by describing the activities and the incarnations. Second line says Hares Chasyanuvartinam, right? So Asya means of his, Anuvartinam means the followers. So not only the activities and the incarnation of the Lord, but also the activities of the devotees of the Lord, the followers of the Lord, right? So that is also in the explaining the science of God. So when we explain Krishna, then we explain devotees of Krishna. And there's always Bhagwan, Bhakta, and Bhakti, right? So both the activities of Bhagwan and Bhakta, that is described. Isha Katha Prokta, this is actually said to be Prokta means science of God, and Nana Akhyana Upa Brimta. And in that way, there's so many different narrations that are actually given of the Lord's incarnations and the devotees of the Lord. So this is topic number 7 of the 10 topics, Ishana Katha. And Prabhupada in the purport here makes a point that people have a tendency to learn about the history and narrations of different people, like Hitler, and then we have all this Alexander the Great, and even in India, like so many ancient civilizations. We all study them, but why are we studying? Like one reason we study is we want to know, like, okay, what happened in the history? What can we learn from it? We don't make the same mistake. Yeah? But the second reason we actually learn about the history is just our curiosity to know where did we come from, right? What happened before us? Right? So that curiosity. And Prabhupada is saying, actually, if this is the purpose of studying history, both of these purposes are actually fulfilled by studying the original history of the incarnations of Lord himself over different periods. Because not only by studying the incarnations, you know how to act in all circumstances, but also our curiosity of like who we are, what we are, where we have come from, the nature of devotees, they are all actually explained. So Prabhupada says, should always be remembered that the material creation is actually created for giving deliverance to us conditioned souls. Hence, when you want to study the history and narration, we should study the history and narration of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That makes Bhagavatam the topics of are to be given respectful oral reception. Right? So that makes Bhagavatam so glorious that one should actually always give respectful oral reception to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? So this is topic number Ishanukata. Right? So topic number 7. Now let's go on to topic 8 and 9 in text number 6.
Yosyanushayanam Atmana Sahashaktivihi Muktirhitvan Yata Rupam Swarupena Vyavastitihi.
Hare Krishna. The merging of the living entity along with his conditional living tendency with the mystic lying down of the Mahavishnu is called the winding up of the cosmic manifestation. Liberation is the permanent situation of the form of the living entity after he gives up the changeable gross and subtle material bodies. Hare Krishna.
So two more, Nirodha and Mukti. So first two lines are defining Nirodha, line 3 and 4 are defining Mukti. Right? So Nirodha means winding up. So Nirodha is winding up of this cosmic manifestation. So after the material world is created, how does it actually wind up? Right? And then also it says, Asya Anu Shayanam. How does all the universes go back into Mahavishnu, right? Who is actually lying down in mystic slumber, who's actually just sleeping. How does all the universes go back into Mahavishnu? So that is the topic of Nirodha. And also it says Atmana Saha Shakti, the living entities along with their Shakti. Shakti means their conditional mystic tendency, along with their tendencies, like all the jivas, they actually have certain karma, certain desires. So along with that, they actually merge into Mahavishnu. So that entire aspect is known as Nirodha. And then the next aspect is Mukti. So this line 3 and 4 is often quoted by Srila Prabhupada. He actually says, what is the real definition of Muktir? Muktir hitvanitha rupam swarupena vyavastiti. What is the real definition of liberation? It means to actually be situated. Hitvan yatha. Okay, so first let's do hitva anyatha. Hitva anyatha means to give up all our false. Liberation means to give up all our false form, our identification with the gross and subtle body, giving up all that, and swarupena vyavastiti, and to be situated in our original constitutional position. Right, so that is liberation. So giving up all other forms and being situated in a permanent situation in our original constitutional form, that is the next topic, Muktir. Okay, and Prabhupada in the purport, he actually talks about this aspect of liberation, and he says there are two kinds of jivas, right? One is a Nitya Mukta, who are always liberated, and the Nitya Baddha, who was ever conditioned, right? Now, in the ever conditioned jivas, they are conditioned because of their mentality of lording it over the material nature. And hence they are here in this material world. But in this material cosmic creation, they have two facilities. One is they can act in such a way that they actually try to fulfill their tendency to lord it over. Or the other way is they can act in this material creation in such a way that they go back home, back to Godhead. Right? So basically the point is, after this material universe is actually wound, is actually going back into Mahavishnu, those living entities who have not, conditioned living entities who have not actually made the use of this material universe to creation to go back home, back to Godhead, they merge into Mahavishnu, and then they again come back and they again try to use the material creation to satisfy their tendency to lord it over. So it was those living entities. But others who are actually using the material creation to go back to Godhead, they need not merge into Mahavishnu. They can directly go back into the mukti state or liberation state. Okay, so that's that. And then, okay, so let's go next, text number 7.
Abhashascha nirodascha yatostyadyavyasiyate sa ashaya param brahma paramatmeti shabdyate.
Hare Krishna. The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being or the Supreme Soul, is the Supreme Source of cosmic manifestation as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the Supreme Fountainhead, the Absolute Truth.
So this verse, text number 7, is defining the last topic, which is Ashraya. Ashraya means the supreme shelter of everyone. Okay? So how does it describe this? Abhasas cha nirodhascha, the cosmic manifestation and the winding up, right? Yataha, the source of both. So the personality who is the source of the creation and the source of winding up, right? Going back to our first of the Chatushloki, it's only the Lord who actually existed before the creation, and after the annihilation, it is the Lord who actually existed. So if you have your shelter as anyone who is within this material creation, then that shelter is not a permanent shelter. But one who is actually beyond this material creation, who is existing at all time, who is the source of both the source and the winding up of both, the source of the creation and the winding up of this cosmic manifestation, that person who is actually Param Brahma, right? Again, Param Brahma, who is the Supreme One, that he is actually the Ashraya, the final shelter of all living entities. He is the supreme shelter of all living entities. Okay? So Prabhupada in the purport, he quotes this Janmadya Asyayataha and then Vadanti Tat Tato Vidas Tattvam Yajnanam Avyayam Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavan Iti Shabdete. So if you see the Sanskrit in this verse, it says Paramatma. So one may say that the super soul is the highest shelter, right? Actually, the jivas in this living entity, they take shelter of the, because the super soul is a manifestation of the Lord in this material world, we take shelter of the super soul. But super soul is actually non-different from Krishna. That's why Prabhupada goes Vadanti Tat Tato Vidas. So Paramatma, or you say Param Brahma, or you say Bhagavan, they are all indicating the ultimate shelter of all living entities. Okay. Right. So Prabhupada quotes so many verses. Krishna to Bhagavan Swayam, right? And then he quotes Aham Sarvasya Prabhu, Mata Sarvam Pravartate. All the quotes, quotes on Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, establishing Krishna as the ultimate shelter of all. Okay. And then Prabhupada says how entire Srimad Bhagavatam is actually non-different from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? Krishna is the ultimate source of all the energies. Right? And then Prabhupada actually elaborates like how the first and second chapters establish Krishna as the ultimate shelter. The third canto, first and second chapters of the canto have already explained, in the second canto, first and second chapter, we see how Sukadeva Goswami established Krishna as the conclusion. Even the third chapter, this is more explicit than fourth chapter, then second canto. So Prabhupada is going through all different chapters and saying that how the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, up to this point, we have established that Krishna is the Ashraya, the ultimate supreme shelter for all living entities. Right? And that is also being confirmed in the Chatushloki and even in Brahma Samhita. Brahma is saying Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha. So with all these different references, it is concluded that the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna is the ultimate shelter, the ultimate Samambhavanam, the ultimate destination for all living entities is actually Lord Shri Krishna himself. Okay. So that is the 10 topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the next two verses, text 8 and text 9, is actually going to talk about that, how it talks of Paramatma and how Paramatma is the shelter of all souls, and he's a shelter of, anyway, that like a little bit technical about Adhyatmic, Adi Daivik, and Adi Bhautik, and how Prabhupada and Jiva Goswami, they give a particular explanation to this term, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a slightly different explanation to these three terms. So we'll discuss that in the next, because it's good to start off with that with a fresh mind. Right? So these are the 10 topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and so I already explained the point. Okay, any questions on these 10 topics? Okay, so these 10 topics are elaborated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and hence it makes the Srimad Bhagavatam as a Mahapurana. And I already mentioned that some Puranas have only 5 of these topics. And even Vishnu Purana, it has these 10, but it focuses on the 5. It does not talk of all the 10. So that makes Srimad Bhagavatam Mahapurana. Now the other point is that sometimes people say that since these 10 topics is mentioned in Canto 2, then Canto 3, 4, 5, up to 12 should be all these topics. That means Canto 3 should talk about Sarga, Canto 4 should talk about Visarga, 5 about Sthanam, and so on. But Jiva Goswami says, no, that's not the right understanding, because that minimizes the value of first canto and second canto. Because one may say that, oh, then the Bhagavatam starts in the third canto? No. You cannot minimize the value of the first and second canto. And also, Jiva Goswami elaborates, and he says that these 10 topics, they are actually found in every canto. Yes, certain cantos may have more emphasis of one of these topics, but these 10 topics are there in all the cantos. And then he elaborates and he actually gives, he says he says how in the first canto there is Sarga, right? Okay, let's go this way. Let's go not the canto wise, but topic wise. If you talk of Sarga, he says the second and third canto, they talk of Sarga, right? We saw the creation, 2.5, it talked of the creation, right? And then Visarga was also explained there, right? From the Virat Purusha, and then creation from Brahma. So Sarga was Canto 2, Canto 3 primarily is there. Visarga, second canto, third canto, fourth canto, we see Brahma's role in creation. Right? So that is Visarga. Then third topic is Sthanam, or the right situation. And he says that's there in third canto, in the seventh canto, in relationship to the conversation between Narad Muni and Yudhishthir, and then 11th canto, right? That is all talking of Sthanam. Then fourth one is Poshanam. Poshanam, he says that is throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, we see the protection of the Lord. Every canto, we see how the Lord is protecting the jivas. So it is there everywhere. Then fifth topic is Manvantara. Manvantara, specifically in the 8th canto, we talked about like different manus. The starting of the 8th canto says, first Manvantara, this is actually it goes further. It says first Manvantara we have already discussed, but what are the second, third, fourth, fifth, and then it goes further. So Manvantara, 8th canto primarily. Then the next topic is Uti, right, impetus or work. And he says it's the 4th canto and 9th canto are the main cantos that focus on that, right? Then 7th one is Ishanukata. So Ishanukata, he says that is in the 4th canto and the 9th canto. Anyway, I can post this on the group so you can look it up and you can see what are the cantos and what are the relationship. Then Nirodha, he says they are more in the 11th and the 12th canto, talks of Nirodha aspect. And then Mukti is in the 3rd canto and the 11th canto. And the last one, which is Ashraya, it is in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is actually all about Lord Krishna's pastimes. So that way Jiva Goswami says that, we shouldn't consider that, oh, canto 3 is this and this, but they are found everywhere in Srimad Bhagavatam, though some of the cantos may have more of one of this rather than the other. Okay, so we'll stop here. Any questions, comments? So these, it's important to memorize this shloka. Sarga, Visarga, Sthanam. Atra Sarga, Visargasya, Sthanam, Poshanam, Uthaya, Manvantara, Ishanukata, Nirodha, Muktir, Ashraya. These are the 10 topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so Any questions or?
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Right.
Sthanam is in one place it says the right situation of every jiva is to accept the victory of the Lord, right? You talk about Vaikuntha Vijaya, and then another way it says Sthanam is a planetary system. So how is that related? Like,
Yeah, so Sthanam, because see, the word Sthanam is used in the first verse, and then the word Sthiti is used in the verse number 3, right? Sthanam, verse number 4, right? Sthiti, yeah. Sthiti is used in verse number 4. So the point is, when it's actually, I mentioned that in 5th canto, when it talks of the entire geography or the cosmology of the universe, the point is not so much to actually say, oh, this is the creation, these are the planets. That's not the goal. Further, there are other books like Surya Siddhanta that focus exclusively on the cosmology. The point of even showing the cosmology is to say that even people in different planetary systems, what is the right situation for each one of them? Whether they are in Kim Purusha Loka or they are in some other planetary system, the right situation is even for people in the demigods on the Swarga Loka, right situation for everyone is to accept Vaikuntha Vijaya. So that is the point. Right? So even the 5th canto cosmology is not just to know like the geography of the universe. It is more to know how living entities all throughout the universe have to accept the ultimate shelter, which is Ashraya, the 10th topic.
like in order to understand each of these topics, you have to weave in the final Ashraya into all of them. Then it makes, that's what makes Srimad Bhagavatam special, right? The topics.
So actually, if you see the topics, this is actually the journey of a jiva. Like how he's created coming from Mahavishnu. Then based on his karma, Brahma will give his body to him. That is secondary creation. Then once he is here in this material, what is the right situation for him? How in every instance he is actually protected by the Lord, right? And how he may go from one manvantara to other. And what is the main thing there? Manu Samhita is given for the jivas to actually rectify their rebellious attitude, right? What is the impetus why they are working in this world? And then how science of God, to understand the science of God, and how if you actually do not use this creation for rectifying a consciousness, then you will have the aspect of Nirodha. You will experience that Nirodha, and then you'll come back, right? So that Nirodha aspect. Then it talks of Mukti, and finally, the ultimate conclusion for every jiva is to come to a state of Ashraya, right? So these 10 topics, one way is how the conditioned jiva is entering into the material world and how he can finally go back to Krishna. So the final conclusion is like how Vedesa Sarva Aham Veda. So entire conclusion of the Bhagavata is to come to the ultimate shelter of Samabona Lord Shri Krishna. Okay, anything else? I heard someone else speak. Vijay Radha, you had a question?
I just was wondering, like you made a, you said you will post it about all the 10 topics in relationship to all the different cantos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it specified anywhere or is it just an observation?
This is actually Jiva Goswami in the Tattva Sandarbha. He actually makes this point. And one should not say that, oh, 3rd canto is topic 1, 4th canto, because people would naturally do it, right? Because after 2nd canto, how many cantos are there? 10 cantos. 10 cantos, 10 topics. So one will directly say this is this, this is, but Jiva Goswami says no. And then he elaborates in that section and says like how all the cantos have all the topics, all the cantos have all. And we'll see even in 3rd canto, we'll see how it starts off with Uddhav talking about the pastimes of the Lord, which is actually the 10th topic of Ashraya. How Uddhav and Maitreya Rishi and Vidura, all that conversation, and they talk directly of Lord Krishna's pastimes. So it is there. So Jiva Goswami is saying all the cantos have all the topics, but one may say, okay, certain topics are more in one of the cantos, and he lists those. But he's not giving so much emphasis on that. He's giving more emphasis on how every canto has all these topics. But I'll post that list. This is actually from Tattva Sandarbha.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I like this point of the spiritual master's satisfaction is the means of assimilating the transcendental knowledge.
Yeah, very powerful point. Yeah. Just by Yasya Deve Parabhakti Yatha Deve Tatha Guru. Just by pleasing, having that implicit faith in both Guru and Krishna, then all the Vedic knowledge will be revealed to us. So just by pleasing the Guru, we'll get the knowledge.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I was just having a feeling of gratitude towards Prabhupada. Because of him, we know that who is our Ashraya, Sanam Prabhu.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's very, very rare how many people know that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I really like the point that because of lust and our senses, we are here, so we should use those senses in the direct process.
Remember RRA. If you like to remember things like that, then you can remember RETS. The way we actually reform our rebellious attitude is by re-engaging our senses in direct service of the Lord. RETS.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, you mentioned about the Achar and Prachar. Like even Brahmaji had to practice before he preaches. And Gandhiji's example was great. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Achar and Prachar. Yes. Anything else?
I really like that aspect of receiving knowledge, that it's not just about the qualifications of the person who's giving it, but there's an aspect of it, of the receiver side, that they have to have their heart fertile to receive it. And that comes from that submission and that mood of doing menial service, and that's the way to get it. And we don't hear in modern education, no one talks about that aspect of that, the cultivating it in the person who's receiving it.
You have to make yourself qualified to receive this knowledge. Yeah. And the more as we progress in bhakti, we are getting more and more qualified, and that actually gives us an opportunity to go deeper and deeper into Bhagavatam. That's why, as we are progressing in bhakti, our first reading of Bhagavatam, you may have an understanding. Second time you read, you get a deeper understanding. Third time, fourth time, fifth time. You can just keep reading Bhagavatam again and again. And every time you get a deeper realization, because we are making ourselves more qualified to actually receive the knowledge. Okay, so we'll stop here. Thank you all so much for your association. Thank you for joining. I wanted to mention one point. Sorry, just a practical point. So next time we'll finish this 10th chapter. I know, so then we have Janmashtami week, but I was thinking the Sunday after Janmashtami. So Janmashtami is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sunday morning, is that a time like everyone can actually select one chapter and do a summary of Canto 2? Will that work? Because it's like, it's not too, like you could just focus on Subodhini and then like few key points from your notes, and then you can just take like 10 minutes per chapter, and we can do the summary of Canto 2. Anyway, I'll post a message on the group, but please think about it. So I'm basically saying on September 9th, September 10th. Again, it's Ekadashi. September 10th, if you can have the summary of second canto, and you all can select a chapter and do the summary 10 minutes. It's only 10 minutes, so it's not much.
Prabhuji, maybe next week of that, Prabhuji, because Janmashtami is a little tiring, Prabhuji, so at least some time to contemplate on the topics, Prabhuji.
I was thinking of that, but the week after that, actually, it'll be a break week because I'm not in town. So if you want, so that's why I was thinking that if we postpone to, because if we do it the week of Janmashtami, then after the break, then we come back, we can start third canto. That's why I was thinking, everyone is tired of Janmashtami, but then I thought that's 10 minutes, it's not much. Like you can just focus on Subodhini and maybe like, 1 hour of preparation or 2 hours of preparation. So anyway, let's see what everyone says. I know Janmashtami is tiring and it's a time when you want to take a little rest but just that because the following weekend then we are not in town, so we will not have class that weekend. So that's why I was thinking if you finish that second canto review, then we can start with third canto after we come back. So think about it, like if it's okay, then you can let me know. I'll post it on the group, and if everyone's okay, then you can just select one chapter and you can start seeing that. So we have how many? 3, 6, 9, 12. So it may be like either you select one chapter or we'll have 2 people select a chapter, however you want to do it. But try to cover all the chapters, a quick review of the second canto. Okay. So thank you so much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripasindhubhyo cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam to all the devotees. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guruji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Hare Krishna all devotees.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, few pages are missing in my Subodhini. My Subodhini book jumps from 200 to 218. So if you have a copy, I can make photocopies of the rest of the pages.
Yes, sure. I can bring my copy and you can take copies from there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Karuna Mataji, I don't have any more hard copies of this Subodhini, but do you use Kindle?
Yes, I do.
Okay, then you can download the Subodhini. It is perfect.
I already have.
You have it.
I've
Okay.
got it. Yeah. It's very nice.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
and I went ahead and downloaded the one for the third canto. That's what I was going to ask you, if that's what everybody